This is. Oh, why do I do it every time? It's just. It is. No, it is. Yeah. This is the Modern
say what's up,
Craftsman
guys.
No,
what's up, guys? Happy Monday.
No, I'm not doing. That's my Instagram story thing.
Is it?
Yes. Hey,
I don't watch
guys?
your story.
You don't watch my stories? Guys, stop. I'm doing the intro. Guys, it's Modern Craftsman Monday. We have Ryan.
I don't have an Instagram story thing.
You good? Can I intro?
That was a great intro.
Great.
As it was.
We're going to roll with this, Doug.
I just saying I don't have an Instagram story thing. I didn't know you had a thing.
Oh, yeah. It's true. I don't have one either. Like, that's my thing.
Now I don't, okay? Tomorrow I don't. Guys, this week we have Ryan from RMS Iron Works on the podcast.
There's no energy in that.
What?
It's Monday. We pick people up on Monday.
We just spent 37 seconds picking people up.
Oh, I thought you cut that. My bad.
No, we're not cutting that.
Okay, good. My bad.
We good?
Dynamite.
Guys, let us know what you think of this intro. Either way, we have Ryan from RMS Iron Works on the podcast this week, a local steel guy, young guy. We talk about how he set himself up for success by learning from his peers past. But also we dig into COVID-19 and how we're individually and as a team.
I'm still drinking Coronas, so
that's a myth, John, and how we're navigating it. And we also talk about John's tongue ring. So stay tuned. We're talking about being burnt out, Tyler.
Yeah, I heard that.
I have a better question.
John said he loves it.
I do. No, I have a question. Like a tongue ring. So I went to the bank today to deposit a check, and I realized the guy has a tongue ring. Like, can someone explain to me the purpose behind that?
No.
Anybody?
Yeah, him.
Like a grown man.
Have you ever heard? Isn't there like a Chris Rock song that he talks about that?
I think I know what it is, but I'm just like, I thought that went away.
I thought that was like
it struck me as like, I'm like, oh. And I sat there like staring into this guy's mouth going.
When did you take yours out?
Took my nose ring out at the same time.
My belly button ring and the tongue ring came out when I started my own company.
Time to grow up.
I don't know. I was just like,
how old?
Dude, he's I'd say he's younger than me, so I'd say mid-30s.
Wow.
That's aggressive.
Yeah.
Yikes.
I mean, good for him, but it makes me think about like that.
Did he like flick it at you?
No. But like I've seen this guy for like I don't know
like
how many months. How many months I've been depositing with this guy, and then today I was just like, huh, that's a new level. I didn't know.
Maybe it's new. Maybe it's new.
Oh, it could be new. Who does that?
That's even crazier.
That's even crazier.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've dated one girl with a tongue ring, and they would always roll it on their teeth.
Yeah, beat the hell out of their teeth.
Yeah,
right?
and that's all I can picture is this guy like doing that and then saying, "Do you want to deposit the whole thing?"
Because he's like, hey, it excites me when you come in because like I love depositing these checks. It's like usually high dollar values. And I never thought about it that way. I'm like, I'm always chasing more, so this is just a partial for me.
Yeah, I always find that weird when we get a big deposit. I had one kid, and he had to be, I don't know, however old you have to be to work at the bank. He was like brand new, and I went to deposit a check. He goes, "Damn, you're getting paid, huh?" And I was like, "No,
money."
No, that's just not to me.
Right? I don't get to see any of that. And it's already spent.
Yeah, it's already gone. I need that no hold. Get it into the bank now.
Yeah, I had that same thing. I had someone. I was taking cash out to buy tools like secondhand from a company that closed down, and she put it through the machine and it made like the noise. And the kid behind me in line just said the same. Damn! It's like, come on, man.
It's like none of First off, you're supposed to be private.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, is that a 1 million or is that 100 million?
Yeah.
So John, you said that he flashed you the tongue ring when you put in a bigger deposit than normal?
Dude, I'm not knocking the guy, okay? I don't want to feel like I'm being judgmental. It also made me feel like I haven't really recognized this person. Like, has it been there for the last 6 months?
Let's be serious.
Maybe it's because you shaved.
I did shave.
Let's be serious for a second. We're going to deposit a Modern Craftsman check at some point. He's going to be like, huh. I should listen to that podcast.
And he's going to hear it.
And he's going to listen to 109, I think, right? Is this 108 or 109? And he's going to get to this part and be like, huh, I made an appearance in
No,
there.
what's going to happen is I'm going to see him next time. He's like, so got the tongue ring last week. This is why I got it. This is why.
I've been an avid listener.
But like, I could never ask that question and be like, so, dude, really appreciate what you do. Tongue ring, break it down for me. Like, maybe I don't know if I want to know the answer either.
Yeah, but I bet
I don't know.
I feel like he would just be like, yeah, sure, no problem. This is why I have it. And you'd be like, all right, cool.
I'm curious now.
Yeah.
I'm not.
My mind races to like the dude from like The Office. What's his face? The guy with the glasses where he parts
Dwight?
his hair. Yeah, Dwight. Like, he's kind of got the Dwight thing. So like the tongue ring doesn't fit.
Wow.
There's only one reason you get a tongue ring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, off to a great start.
I would just spit my water out.
Audio troubles.
I just wanted you guys to feel the same way I felt about the tongue ring.
Yeah,
Now everyone does.
I don't know if I feel the same way that you feel.
You're thinking about it. You know what I'm thinking about. Good.
Off to a weird start.
We could pretty much wrap it at this point.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks for having me.
There's a lot we want to get to today, but I think the biggest thing currently is this coronavirus, COVID-19, and how it's impacting all of us. I mean, Boston, Ryan, John, you guys work in Boston. Yesterday, they announced that they're shutting down all construction. Well,
10-day grace period.
is it 10?
Yep.
I hear 8, I hear 12, I hear 10. Now?
We shut down our project today, and then we're going to ramp it back up
When?
tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
For 10 days.
So we immediately, I sent you the I read up on it because I was
Yeah.
like, it doesn't really affect
We
us.
actually did the same thing after we talked this morning.
Because I was like, you know what? There's no reason why. It's not so much us. We could shut down and be comfortable. It's just, it's the overall pool of people we have that I feel that we're accountable for. Like trades that had this stuff slotted for the next 6 months. What should we do with them? So that's what we try to do.
It's hard because I feel the same way even about my guys, right? You know, the guys that are working directly for us, and but there's a line where it's not financially feasible anymore, even with the support, right? Where it's ultimately not your decision, John, or mine. It's to a point where there's no other choice. And
Is it the numbers?
it is the numbers.
I love how that's coming back around.
Okay, full circle. John started COVID just to prove a point.
Not the case.
No, but that's what we're battling with. It's it's extremely difficult. We're talking every single morning, day by day, trying to figure this out. What makes the most sense? Do we lay people off? Do we exhaust their vacation time? What happens when the vacation time runs out? There's no definitive end to this.
Not after Trump said it could last all summer.
Yeah, it's a new animal.
Yeah.
Never faced something like this before.
Right.
And I'm on the other end of it. Like you guys are kind of the GCs for us, right? So we're one of those subs that you talk about. And luckily we don't have a whole lot going on in the city right now. But I think it's a matter of time before it goes north, and it's the same kind of thing. You know, other jobs getting shut down, and we're gonna have to face it the same way as kind of day by day.
What is your? I mean, to get right to it, what's your contingency plan in a situation like this?
Get a tongue ring.
Yeah, I already did.
We're
already
not
did.
making this whole podcast about a tongue.
No, we kind of just for a Godfather reference, like we stick to the mattresses, right? We kind of hunker down, no unnecessary spending, and we plan through. I mean, we go through the jobs we have right now are with bigger clients. A lot of it's hourly work, some of it's bid work, and as of right now, we're being allowed to finish the scopes we have and work hourly T&M basis. And if the time comes where we have to basically shut down, then we'll kick around the shop. We'll do all the stuff that we always talk about never having the time to do, right? Maintenance, getting the other trucks set up, whatever comes up, and just got to ride it out. I mean, I don't think we really have a choice.
What are the other GCs telling you?
Some of them are very optimistic. Depending on the scope of work, we do a wide variety of different types of things besides structural steel. So some of them, it's rigging and crane. We're supposed to travel to Pennsylvania. That'll be like out in the middle of nowhere, basically, right? Like not a large crew. I don't think that's going to be affected by the sound of it. But other GCs are same thing. Is like, hey, I think it's a matter of time before we shut down. Just be prepared, And once this whole thing subsides, we'll pick up where we left off and see what is under the rubble, basically.
Yeah.
So I think that's all we can do.
It's frightening as a GC because, yesterday we started our day off saying, our jobs, there's not a lot of people on them. We can kind of kick back on how many people are on the site. We don't necessarily need, that many people in one space or one spot. We can spread it out, schedule a call with a client. Then they announce that shutdown. And prior to that, we had 2 subs call and say, hey, we're shutting down as a company. We're going to do our part. We have a lot of people. It's not worth it to us. We want to be safe. And then this morning we got approval to move forward with 2 big millwork projects because the schedule allowed. We were like, hey, we have the opportunity. We can pull some guys into the shop, expedite some of this. And our finisher, now it's like, well, are they going to be available? Can we get material? Finisher shutting down for some time. Material, they're like, yeah, if you order it today, we can ship it tomorrow. But then after that, we're shutting down.
Right. Yeah. That's the other side of it too, is like we all have vendors, right? So even if we want the work to progress, maybe you need material, maybe you need hardware, maybe you need rentals, whatever it is. And that, that could still limit you. So even if your job's still rolling, that you might be affected on the supply end of that, right?
I think that's, Mike was in here today and we were talking about his project. The clients are great. They understand the circumstances. They want us to continue to work. We're separated. There's not a lot of people on the job. And the biggest thing he's focusing on is ordering everything. And the client understands that. It's like, if you want to front load this and get all this material ordered now, so we have it, so we're not delayed by, later on being delayed.
Right.
It would be great to have it in.
Yep.
Because John, what about you for vendors? Are you getting that backlash now already?
No.
Not at all.
Everyone's showing up. We want to be the resource for everyone. If everything else shuts down, we want to be able to keep our doors open and get more stuff done because, our goal right now is loyalty died for a lot of subs and a lot of companies because everything was so good.
Right.
So this is the time that which is crazy, but it's being there for our subs that, like, if Boston shuts down, we have a carpentry crew there. We can put them in Cambridge. Cambridge is looking like it's going to shut down Thursday, Friday for 10 to 15 days. So then our goal is, hey, do we put them down in Cohasset and have them do the deconstruction? So just to kind of, and we don't have to think that way.
Right.
But that's what's going to, have longevity in the culture of our company and who we have as a group.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, there's certain stuff that's out of our control as far as city mandated stuff, town mandated stuff, or state. But like you said, like having the resiliency to say, hey, look, we're going to do everything we can to keep rolling, stay on top of it. And as long as our suppliers can get stuff to us, then we'll make it work.
Yeah. I mean, the hardest part right now is the building departments.
Yeah, you get to a certain point where you can't get an inspection.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think it's absolutely foolish that they shut them down when they can shut down the office and do it by appointment only. And most of the stuff could be digital.
Remotely.
It should force them to be digital. And, worst case scenario, if this happened that quickly and it shut down and you don't know how long, then there should have been a third party put in place. Not just say, hey, go pound sand for 2 weeks or longer. Because just because you get a pension and you have a job,
well,
and you can handle 2 weeks, what about the rest of us? You don't have a job if we all shut down when you get back.
And when they do get back, it's going to be this overwhelming backlog of, hey,
absolutely.
I need this now.
I think it's going to be a bunch of things. I think a lot of guys are going to really suffer, and they're going to have to shut down. I mean, restaurants right now, I don't know how they're going to survive. I mean, restaurants, the profit margin on them are very, very slim as to start with. Our local restaurant in Sherborne, the Heritage, they emailed all of us last weekend and said, hey, can anybody do takeout with us, and can anyone buy gift cards for the date? Because if this goes on for 2 weeks like they think, we won't survive. We'll be out of business.
Like,
Straight
that's sad. And it's like,
that is
the way you said it, it's like, can anyone do takeout with us?
Yeah,
like, you can hear like the desperation.
Right.
And that's, I mean,
it's our cleaning lady. Not that I'm rich, but we have a lady that comes every 2 weeks and does our stuff, and she's awesome. She's amazing. She's pregnant with her third kid, and someone else from next door in town, they own a farm, Unity Farm, put this whole thing together. My wife's reading it. She's like, oh, she's bragging about Maria and all this stuff, and I'm like, that's awesome. And then my wife's like, oh my God. I'm like, what? And she's like, it's because everyone that Maria has as a client bailed and said, don't come in next week. Everybody. So I'm like, do I have her do a deep clean of my project? every Friday. Like, I'm like, I'm not wealthy. Okay, I live within my means, but it's like, how do you help as many people as possible? Like, my wife donated to the Boston Food Bank this past weekend. Not even an hour later was our credit card corrupted. Just for the record, be aware. Like, but it's just, how do you kind of, like, someone said online, I was, I put it out there, and someone DM'd me and said, look at everyone else's clothes, but they're going to keep all the builders and all that. We're the backbone. I'm like, this isn't the time to stand on a soapbox.
Right.
This is the time to stand together.
Right.
That doesn't prove any point right now. Is you're going to be this selfish little kid, crying at this point in time because look how important I am.
Right.
The point is that how do you make do with what you have, and how do you correct this so it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, I mean, John, you probably talk about it the most, is the recession and the correction to our, the market, and this is an extremely fast correction.
Yeah.
And I, someone who doesn't pay attention to it as much as I should, I wonder what your, like, Ryan, you too, what's your stand on? Do you think this is something that it's going to hit us really fast and we'll be able to bounce back just as fast, or is this going to hit us fast, hard, and, be a long healing process?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I think about it all the time. Like, I think on the front lines, I've thought of it as a 2-week hiatus, or a month hiatus. And I'm like, okay, we can weather this out, but depending on what happens with, like you said, vendors, subs, GCs, bigger companies, owners, who knows? I mean, if it drags on for months and months and months, I mean, what is that going to do?
I think John's right, is that a lot of people are going to have to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people that don't have any reserves right now that are going check to check, and now you're preventing that whole, steal from Peter to pay Paul thing.
Right.
That people just kind of go with the motion and go with the flow. And it always works because it's always there. And not having that, and this is, like, I talked to Ben today, and I was like, I'm not even scared. Like, I'm not even worried. And that gives me a better ability to then work. I'm not saying that in a...
Yeah, why aren't you worried?
Because, I mean, we have a reserve. So we can cover all our expenses and everything for the next 3 months. So, like, if that were to come down, so now I can, instead of planning for my immediate needs, for me to survive on salary and all that stuff, I can then think about, hey, if they're going to really close us up for a month, do I cancel my insurance now so then I can renew it? Because I'm not going to pay, $6,000. Like, how is this going to work? Are they going to put it on pause? Should I send that email where I'm not like, oh my God, how am I going to pay next week's mortgage?
Right.
I'm able to do that. Hey, Benny, what are you seeing? Should we pull somebody back out of there and put them somewhere else? Where when you say that to your carpentry crew, they're like, dude, I didn't even think about that. They're panicking. Now you're a resource for them. This is why we kept our company lean. And again, I'm saying that just in general, not to you.
Understood.
But it's like, hey, we want to stay lean in case something ever happened. And more importantly, now I call my investors and be like, what are we buying right now? Like, he's like, we're selling gold. Gold went on a run because of the virus. So I'm like, I don't have any gold. My gold chain from high school doesn't work.
Your tongue ring.
But it's like, what do we do? Are we looking for properties? Like, what's the move here? What's the short? Like, what's happening? What can we take advantage of? And, like, I went to hockey last Wednesday with a bunch of head fund guys. We went to the bar afterwards, and all 10 of them were like, dude, how do we invest? And I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes. Like, they want to get out of stocks and be like, this is, who knows what's going to happen? Interest rates are down to 0. They're going to have to change, hopefully the mortgage rate, which then have to then bring back, housing, because who knows what's going to happen. Everyone's going to pump the brakes.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was getting at, is how, like, why aren't you afraid? And you say that you have reserves for 3 months. What if this goes on for 6 months?
My point is, if it happens for 6 months, there's people there's going to be a majority of people that don't have reserves. So everyone's going to start crying wolf and not paying mortgages. So the government's going to have to put something in place. Again, I'm guessing here.
Sure.
They kind of cover this.
So by 3 months, you're still in a better spot.
I mean, in my opinion, right now, I think they're trying to figure out how to put, a shelter in place right now. And the only reason why it's taking this long is to try and figure out what happens. Like, Italy's been shelter in place for a month. So it's like, what, are they going to suspend mortgages? How are they going to then do this where you don't come out of this in a massive recession, where all these companies have shut down, no one's now doing renovations because that restaurant that was doing awesome, that they then did 3 restaurants, they're all done. You know, this could go, like, I think of like the barber shop we did. Like, does anyone come into his spot? Does the mall still ask for the rent? Like, what's he going to do?
But do you think this is, what do you think the reaction is to when this goes away? Do you think it's a long healing process, or do you think this is something that we can bounce back from?
It all depends on how you've shaped your company, in my opinion. I think if you have the reserves and
You mean as a public?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm thinking I can't control the public and how it works. I mean, everyone bought toilet paper, and I don't know why. It went on. Like, I didn't do any of that. We went to the market today to get eggs and stuff, and she's like, "Yeah, it's all back." I'm like, "All right." So it's just, I don't know. I think it's gonna be like someone said the other day. There's no bailout for the blue collar,
Right.
And I don't want it. Like, I think I sent you the same link about, they put like a $10 million fund together in Massachusetts for, small business under 50 people that you can take a $75,000 loan, no payments for 6 months. I get that, but it's like someone else said to me on IG, they're like, "Oh, I'm getting up." It hasn't hit them yet. They're in a different state. They're like, "Oh, I'm going to get up on all my billing." I'm like, that doesn't help.
Right.
That puts you in a hole the same way if you took a loan.
Right.
Like, if you don't have, like, we just had profit that we put away. Our goal, in all honesty, was to put $150,000 away so that we could buy through vintage development a property that would then have income as a company. So that way we're taking our profits, putting into that, and then we have something that's kind of there. But and now we have it. And now we're, like I say in everything, once you have something that's there, something else falls apart. This is a prime example. Like, we put it all in there finally. We took out profit that we weren't using for other stuff, and now we have to, hopefully we have it there, so that way we told all our guys we're not laying anybody off. Don't worry. Or some of our guys were like, "Yeah, you don't have to pay me for a couple of weeks." I'm like, "No, we're all good." So it's tough, but it gives me to be able to focus on the jobs where if a client asks, it's like nothing changes. We're going to adapt, roll with it, and that we're supposed to give comfort to people in how we operate and what we do and not have panic. And it feels good to be in the situation. Is he snipping his nails?
No, I have pliers. I'm grabbing something.
It's very loud.
Is it really?
Oh,
Yeah.
It's a nice headset.
Cut the shit.
It's a nice headset. It's like not even close to my head.
What, Tyler? What are you seeing? Are your subs, like, how are they reacting? Because I know it's you and your brother right now, but outside of that.
So everyone's I'm at the point in my job where it's rough-ins. So the plumber and the electrician were there today. They plan to come back tomorrow, but the scale of what I do is so small. Even where we are in this house, we're completely isolated from the homeowners. We have, if we need a separate entrance to the house, they're completely fine with us moving ahead. So the one hang up would be inspections. I think that with a lot of what we do, I have an ability to sustain what we're doing for a fair amount of time financially, and just with the amount of work that we have lined up and the kind of scope of work that we do, as long as we can get into people's houses. And if we can't, I have enough stuff to kind of keep moving ahead. And what's on my plate, even as far as responsibility for employees and everything else, is minimal. And I mean, that's kind of been my intention always, so that I don't know, even with the restaurant. So we have a friend who over the past 5 years has gone from managing higher end restaurants to now building and developing restaurants, and has investors, and everything's been good. So he's probably opened up 6 restaurants in the past 5 years or so. And like, yesterday was day 1 where they shut down things in Philly. Today's day 2, and they're already on Facebook asking for a bailout. And for me, it's terrible where everything is, but if you have a business that can't sustain one day, like, how do you have 5 restaurants? You shouldn't have 5 restaurants, because now if you can't, like, it's not month 5, it's not week, it's day 2, and you're already looking for somebody to hand you money. Sustainable business, And I don't think that you're necessarily doing things right if you can't ride this out a little bit. I know every business is different and everyone has their own agendas and everything else, but for me, I feel like to have a long-standing business that will thrive the ups and downs, you have to be built to kind of withstand that. And if you can't kind of buckle down and ride this out some, then maybe you need to reevaluate your business model and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, good.
No, I would agree with that. We try to operate in like a scarcity mindset too, right? So if we try to structure it in the sense that we don't look and say, okay, cool, we have this huge pile of gold, we're good. We never set ourselves with that comfort level. And so it's like almost working out of that. It's almost now we know we have that reserve, but we're used to dealing with that. You know what I mean? We're used to keeping it close to home and essentially just operating the way you should, right? Like you said, living within your means. It's operating your business the same way, right? And so now when something like this hits, we don't have a knee-jerk reaction. Like, we're cautious and we see what's going on. We try to react to it, but we don't overreact. We don't flip out and we don't go, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
It just seems like it's an even switch when something like this happens.
Sure.
You're not scared by it.
Yeah, I mean, to speak, for myself, yesterday was tough. We sat and, we went into the weekend not thinking that this was going to impact us. And then through developments over the weekend, then Monday, and then the shutdown, it's like, it was, to be dead honest, yesterday was tough for me, where I was so far into all the negativity of what was going on that it was like, what are we going to do? Are we laying people off? Are we letting them go? Do we have to scale back? Do we shut down all the jobs? And all of this stuff was, we're sitting around this table here and trying to figure out, and it's like overwhelmingly negative. To the point where I went home and I sat in the mudroom on this bench. My wife walks in. She goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, thinking. Because right now my mind is just not in the right spot. I've always been someone who looks at the positive. Always been, we can work through anything. This is what we're built to do. This is what we're supposed to be doing. And I found myself on the complete opposite side of that. I don't want to say buying into the hype, because I understand how important it is, the shutdowns and like the social distancing, the new word that we've all learned this week. I understand all that and I appreciate it, and I'm not saying that I'm against that, but I've let the negativity control my day. Where today I woke up and I came and I said, listen, I said it to Ken, I think he was here first. I'm like, I don't want today to be like yesterday. We left yesterday with uncertainty. We left yesterday with basically saying that we were going to kind of give up and let this ride out and then reconvene. That's not who we are. We are we should be working through this.
Right.
And, 2 guys stayed home today because yesterday we made the decision that if you have a fever, just stay home. Like, you get sick time, like we'll figure it out financially. It's not worth it. But then today, at the end of the day, Ryan, you were here. He's like, "Hey, what about the guys tomorrow?" I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, if they're not feeling well, I don't think it makes sense. Like, let them feel better.
Right.
Because maybe it's not the cold. Maybe it's a cold. Maybe it's not.
But it's not worth the risk.
But it's not worth the risk. But that doesn't mean that we need to shut down the company.
Yeah.
Let's figure this out. Let's talk to the people. Let's talk to who we're working for. One of our clients is in Boston. We're riding the week out, like John said. We're going to ride the week out, get that job done as far as possible, and see where we are at the end of the week. Our other jobs outside of the city, we met with them today. They're totally fine. We're separated. Like, we're going to roll through it. They said if there's anything we can do, if there's stuff that you need to get a brand new chair, John.
That's just broken.
If there's stuff that you need to order, if there's other aspects of this job that you can hop on ahead of time and move some people around, they were willing to be a resource for us, which was just increasing this positivity side. Where it's like, you know what, this isn't all doom and gloom.
Right.
And I think I actually shouted him out today. Todd Daywalt, I think is his name. He posted yesterday a video about, how it's really easy to be in the negative mindset, but why not look at this, us tradespeople, we're problem solvers. Why not look at the problem and see what you can solve? Yeah. What's something that is being caused by this? People are working from home. Do they have a spot to work from home? Can you help them? Can you help set up their home office? Like, not that we're going to go around setting up home offices, but why not consider the options that we can help with to ease the pain more so than just, self-loathe.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Or
Self-deprecate, I know where you're getting at. Self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And like there's two extremes. The easy one is to fall into the negativity, especially with media and social media, right? But there's the other end of that of being too proud and too strong and just saying, no, like stop freaking out. Everything's fine. That's equally as ignorant, right?
Of course.
But I think the common denominator there is like you need to stay resilient in hard times. And it's easy to say that when times are good, like, oh, we're tough, we're strong, we're this. But like this is when it's hitting the fan, right? And so now I'm not saying you freaked out. It sounds like you didn't. But like you said, you recognize that negative attitude and you were like, hey, you know what? Like we need to have a different approach because a lot of it's out of our control and there's nothing we can do about that, right? So I think the approach is to stay strong, weather it out, take it a day at a time, not freak out, right?
Yeah.
And just try to resort to the measures we always do is like work and live within your means, company and home, right? And just try to take all the precautions you can. And at the same time, don't let unnecessary negativity get in the way of judgment, I guess, right? And like I don't know if you guys do this, but I try to stash aside a budget of like, okay, I know times are going to get slow, whether it's economy or between jobs or whatever it is. Like that's really never happened with us, to be honest, but I always wanted to plan for a rainy day. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to budget aside like a month or whatever it is of, shop time basically and say, hey, look, like if we don't have anything going on, come in here, organize the trucks, clean the shop, let's paint the walls, let's do this. And it's like, okay, at least the guys are still working. We budgeted for it. It's already prepared for, and we don't have to go, oh, like, things were going so good. We didn't see it coming. Sorry, guys, you got to take time off. Like that to me, that's like the very last option. Like I tell my guys all the time, like I'll sell my shirt to make payroll. Like I'm not,
of course.
And I'm sure you guys are the same way. It's like I'll never be able to tell a guy like, sorry, I can't make payroll this week. That's the worst nightmare to me. So I'll do what I can to keep everything floating, and I think that's all we can do.
Yeah, it's fun. We joked offline, but I think John, you said it right when you walked in. It's like I did the office reno because we were, a little slow and we had the time. I was like, let's take care of it. And now it's like
it could have used that.
Damn it! It could have used that, but.
Same with us. We came across a company. It's kind of a bizarre story, but a company we're familiar with, I'll leave it there, is closing the doors, right? Metal fabrication company. So they reached out to us with this big list of equipment, and it was all good prices. We knew all the equipment, knew who was using it, and I was like, man, we got to hop on that. Like we're heading into a couple of big jobs. This was very recent, like a week or two ago.
Okay.
Very big jobs coming up. Like we could use the equipment. We could also use the capital for the jobs, but like I think it's a good move to get this stuff because we're going to have to buy it anyway.
Yeah.
Bought a pretty substantial amount of stuff, and then like a week later, this starts coming out. So it's kind of the same deal. It was like we didn't have to spend that money. I saw a really good deal, and I'm like, hey, I think this is a good time to do this. And now, like you said, it's like a week or two later, it's hindsight, and you're like, man, I kind of wish I had that reserve.
But at the end of the day,
no one could see this coming.
Right.
No,
right,
and
right.
Not only that, it's like I don't regret any of this.
Sure.
You're not going to regret
no,
the
purchase. Likewise, and
yeah, timing could have been better, but timing can always be better.
Yeah, and we're laughing about it. You know what I mean? Like we're in a really good spot to the point where we can laugh about something like
Sure.
it. We don't have to go selling the stuff now because we're like freaking out.
Right.
We still see it as a good investment. And yeah, like you said, no one can predict it. All you can do is laugh. That's it. I mean,
I'm sure there's a few people out there saying, I predicted this.
yeah.
I think someone posted a video. Bill Gates predicted it in 2015. So-and-so predicted it in
all the conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things here. Is that you can be vulnerable, but I think at most, I know you've done the whole team thing, Nick, where it's a lot of we and stuff like that. But at this point in time, this is when people look for leadership and someone to kind of stand up and go, "This is the plan. This is what's going to happen. We're all good." But if you're going to go, "Hey, how do you handle this?" They're going to go home and go, "I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow," and then they actually don't work. So
that's my word. That's exactly the position we're in right now, where it's like there's a lot of uncertainty. And it's because I'm not because I don't feel as though I have the answer yet. And I hate that, and I'm sorry I cut you off, but I know that's what you were getting at. It's like my role as the leader in this position, and the fact that there's uncertainty bugs the hell out of me because I want to give these guys. I basically am trying to prevent here's the plan, and then Friday say the plan changed.
Yeah, that's
look what the city's done.
Right.
And I think, like you said, like last week, you're going into it like, okay, we're here, we're gonna be fine, we'll ride this out, and then in days' time, you were like, well, the world just flipped upside down, and I'm thinking like, okay, we're here now having this conversation. In 2 weeks, what are we gonna be doing? You know, are we gonna be calling each other because we're all gonna be stuck home? I mean, so you don't know. And like I said, I think you can project and you can speculate and all that, and I just don't think it does any good. You know, you can prepare and use the resources you have available to you at the time, and try to look forward, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, you can't stress and panic about something you can't control.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, that's what wakes me up at 3 a.m. is stuff that I know I can control that I haven't gotten done.
Right.
Like, it's never like, oh, what if someone says no to this project? I can't control that. If they say no, it is what it is. And I know it still breeds uncertainty, but that doesn't make it below me. It's the same as the other way around. Is like, we were going to hire somebody like last week or 2 weeks ago, and I was like, yeah, let's just pump the brakes. And but I was like, yeah, this guy will come on as like a superintendent, you know, or APM, and the goal is to move John into a PM role. But I go, hey, when that happens, I don't want to hear about everything. The whole point of you getting put in place is that I hear less crap. I don't expect that it's all
goes back to your original talk. It's like taking less.
Well, taking less responsibility, but if the whole point is that I can then focus on other things, but it comes down to the fact that you have to be able to lead and have a plan where it's like, oh, you hire somebody, that person then can go, all right, what's that mean for me? Are we equal? Are we not equal? Do I have more responsibility? Like, I guess when I grew up, like I remember watching guys and they'd be like, oh, we're finishing a project, and carpenters that were lifetime carpenters, they would start panicking and start going, I don't have work. I don't think he's got work. And I'd just be like, Tom, do we have work for next week? For the next 2 weeks? Like, why not just ask it instead of creating all this craziness and mumbo jumbo? And Tom would be like, yeah, we're going to this job and this job. I'm like, why didn't you just ask? I was like 17, 19, whatever it was. And I'm like, why not just ask it instead of going, I'm going to go look for a job? I'm like, because now you're not focusing on what you're supposed to be doing. Like, I guess that's what I was saying before, is that if I was worried about paying myself, paying the guys, insurance, trucks, all that stuff, then I wouldn't be focused on the projects at all. I wouldn't have productivity, which means anything I'm doing right now isn't really great billable time towards the project, which means it's going to hurt me longer than what's going to happen that I can't control. So it's like, how do I control what I can? How do I be the most direct as possible? Have a plan that's going to work, and if things change, that can change with it. That's what we do every day. We have a plan going in for renovation or putting steelwork in, then you're like, I'm going to do this boom, I'm going to do this crane, we'll do this lift, and then you get in there and go, no, this is going to work. And you adapt. All of us expect that. No one thinks you know
all the time.
The future. So how do we come up with the best laid plan, come up with it and go, hey, it's going to change because of this. This is why. No one's ever going to question that, but going into it kind of panicky and freaking out and, you know, paying the guys in toilet paper, it's not going to work. You know, it's like, how do we go right at it? And if things change, I mean, I'm comfortable if we weather the storm for a month, which I feel like it could happen. And I gotta whole point, I gotta look at worst case scenario.
Yeah,
I don't need to go, hey John, what do you think of this crazy nonsense that I'm thinking about? Like, that's just not gonna add anything. He's gonna go home and go crazy.
Right.
But between Ben and myself, yeah, and I'll call Jason from Artisan, you know, and just be like, hey, I remember last week I called him, like, are you giving guys time off? Because like guys will ask. John's like, hey, you know, what do you think we should do? And I'm like, he's not asking me what we think we should do. He's asking me what I think I should do with you. And should I send you home so you're not putting yourself in a vulnerable spot where you could be susceptible to this virus?
See, that's the other thing, right? Is, you know, doing right by one where it's like keeping these guys busy and keeping these guys working. Are you then putting them in a spot where they're vulnerable?
Right.
And is that... Are we going against what we're being told to do? Yes, right?
I know it's a double-edged sword because
this is what I'm. So I agree with a lot of what you're saying, John, and like the uncertainty and not having a plan or sending people home and not laying them off. But then but at the same time, we're being told that we should all like everyone that's non-essential, I'm using air quotes, should be at home right now, allowing this to pass, as they say, flatten the curve, so we can all go back to work sooner. The longer we wait to do this as a society, the longer it's going to take to correct.
Yeah,
and this is the back and forth.
That was where I was going with, like, there's the two sides of that. Is like, you don't want to be the macho tough guy saying no, we're gonna weather out, and then end up making it worse, right? You put your guys in jeopardy, you put yourself in jeopardy, your customers, whoever. And you're right. Like, where's the line on that? It's such a double-edged sword. Like, you're gonna hurt one way or the other, right?
Yeah, one of our subs is, he's an older guy. He's like, hey, he called. He's like, just an FYI, we're not working. I'm 70 years old. Like, no thanks.
Right.
So
right.
when I'm told that I'm safe, I'll be back. And you can't, like,
and that's up to him.
Right.
It's his call. But I think
but
everyone else.
Is it our responsibility to put that in place so we so I'll give you an example. Last Saturday, I live in Southie, and every single restaurant.
You're the reason why Boston shut down, aren't you guys?
Yeah, we
nice job.
As a town, yes, we are. There was.
Hey, we're not going to celebrate St. Patty's Day.
I'm talking.
Yeah, we are.
Thousands of people, like, in all the restaurants, lines, like, just incredible lines, and we go out because we're going for a walk with the dogs and the kids, and me and my wife are like, did these people not listen?
Yes,
No.
they didn't.
And it's to the point where 9:00 the next morning, there were lines in front of these bars waiting for brunch, and they had to come out and say, "Hey, city just shut us down just now. We're closing all the restaurants." And I feel as though by in part, are we doing the same thing by continuing to work, continuing to have people on our jobs, go pick up material. One of our vendors called us direct and said, "Hey, listen, one of our guys tested positive." And
Ooh.
It's like, and I know you guys have been in interaction with him. It's like, shit. Like, what am I supposed to do then?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're going to be able to control all of that. I think even if you look up the entire social distancing thing, you're not supposed to be in crowds and not supposed to be groups of over 10 people. So I think it depends on each job, and it's not necessarily protecting yourself as much as protecting other people, because you don't know who you're going to come in contact that's going to then come in contact with an elderly person.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it depends on your jobs. If you have jobs where it's 25 people around, probably shouldn't be going to that job because it's a larger group of people.
That's like what we said.
But
we were like, last week, we're like, all right, make sure all the sites only have 25 or less. And then, like, Monday, we're like 10 or less. Like, we're just adapting to what's happening because.
But you're just limiting the possibility. If all 10 of those people come in contact with someone, and all 10 of those people live with their grandparents, I'm using this as an example, you're like that become like you're making it worse. I guess, and my wife would argue here, it's like you're not trying to prevent it, you're trying to slow this down. And that's what the amount of people in groups is helping slow it down. It's the big groups that make this curve continue going up.
I mean, I was sitting there thinking, like, John called me. He's like, yeah, I called him at like 7 o'clock. He's like, yeah, I'm at Market Basket. And I'm like, that's where you get this. When you're in line with 400 people.
In the toilet paper aisle.
Yeah, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, that's where it goes down. Not, and again, me being naive and ignorant, I'm like, that's where it happens. Not on the job site where, where at least we have control over what's happening on that job site. I feel like we, not everyone's touching anything. No one's touching anybody else. We're practicing that distancing. Even though I shook the logger's hand today. I was like, oh, what's going on, dude? I haven't met you. I was like, oh, that's the old me from like 2 weeks ago who shakes hands. Like,
Are you getting the elbow taps?
No, I'm not doing anything. I'm not going near anybody. I'm just like, hey, I'm doing like the high school move where you see someone in the hallway and
Hey,
you get
see ya.
the chin up.
So,
Yo, what's up? But no, I mean, it's a tough call. Like, I called Jason last week because I was, hey, do I just give time off? And I went home and asked my wife, I'm like, what do you think I should do? Should I give those guys some time? And my wife's like, if they do a mandatory, shelter in place, then you're going to have to pay those guys. So don't get it. She's like, I know you want to get ahead of it, but, like,
Don't be
this
negative.
could get way worse. And I was
Yeah.
like, good call. Let's just, weigh it out. And now we're probably going to have to pay everyone, when I think it's inevitable it's going to happen.
Mhm.
I mean, that's why, Tyler, you and I, we all texted last night that you guys have a shelter in place at night.
Yeah, between 8 and 5, they basically, that whole non-essential employees, they don't want out on the roads. And basically, I think they're trying to prevent people from going out to bars and restaurants and larger social outings where, again, they're trying to limit the exposure and kind of slow this down. I think that, for me personally, and I don't think it would matter what size company I had, I would be playing by the rules, if they say 10 or less, and just taking it day by day. Like, all of my customers understand, even if it's little things we have on or moving forward jobs that are scheduled for months down the road, that everything at this point is day by day. So we'll update you. I'm planning on going to the job. I'm planning on having my subs on the job. At that point, the most people on the job at a time are going to be 4 people, 5 people. My customers are fine with that. We had the discussion today. That's tonight. Maybe something comes on the news tonight that changes that, and tomorrow's different. But for now, that's just what we're doing, which I personally don't do. It'd be easier if somebody was just like, shut it down. The day-to-day uncertainty of it, I think, is the most difficult part. But my customers do want us there. I don't want to just stop working. There's bills to pay. And I personally don't feel like my job or what I'm doing, I'm not coming into contact with masses of people in the public. My job site is small. And it's, again, if somebody's uncomfortable, they don't want to be doing it, then let's talk and we'll make arrangements to figure out what we have to do. I'm not having anyone, you have to come to the job tomorrow. No, if you're uncomfortable with it, don't.
That's key. That's exactly what I said. I go, if you're feeling sick, man, don't come in. And if you're uncomfortable with this whole thing, don't come in.
Yeah, like, if it makes you uncomfortable, then don't. I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. If my customers were uncomfortable with it, obviously we're not going to show up.
Yep.
So I think it's just keeping it all open and keeping the lines of communication open, and then right now playing by the rules. And there is, you have to have a conscience throughout all of this too. If you think that you're doing something that's intentionally exposing people or putting people at risk, then you need to make that judgment call. I don't think it's not black and white.
Yeah, that's the hard line to follow. The line there is hard to find. It's like,
it is,
because you're trying to do right both ways, right? And that's the hard part.
Yeah, 2 days ago, Dunkin' Donuts still had elderly people in there when I went in. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And I went in there today, and they had no chairs in Dunkin' Donuts. I'm like, well played, donkeys. Well played. And then they shut down my office. Panera has no seats. I was going to post on that today, but I'm like, is that too much?
Apparently, I posted something about the podcast, advertising our podcast, and my wording was poorly spoken. My wife was like, "You sound like an asshole."
What would you say?
Welcome to the
I have
club.
no idea. She was like, redo that. I was like, all right. Ryan, when you started your company, you started to allude to the fact that you kind of always have had this mindset of being prepared. Is that since day one?
Are you a doomsday prepper?
No, absolutely not.
Canned goods?
Absolutely not. I live in New Hampshire, so I have
Bunker?
plenty of guns.
He's
just
got
by
a
means,
bunker.
because I live there. But no,
1-inch steel, thick walls.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. Is like, honestly, even from the beginning of the company, it was like I was going out on my own just as a solo guy. I was already doing it on the side, so it was like I knew what I was kind of doing. But as far as like self-sustaining, it was new. So I could take on anything head on. I felt pretty good about it knowledge-wise, but I didn't want to, it was always in the back of my head was like, all right, what if I fail? Like, what would happen,
Yeah,
right? And
that was right from day one.
Yeah, and that was the driver. It was like, okay, well, I'm never going to get in a position where I can't be paid for this. I'm never going to get in a position where I need to pay all these bills and I can't afford to. So, like, I started setting up systems of, what can I do to basically, like, cover my ass? And the more we grew, and it happened pretty fast, like, the more we grew, I had to apply that to other employees. I had to apply that to the shop we bought. I had to apply that to everything. So I think that between we've talked about like profit first, right? Like
Yeah.
that system, and like that's really worked for me, is that scarcity mindset of like, okay, if you know you have this big nest egg, whether it's money or something else, jobs, backlog, anything like that, you're always going to operate like a king sitting on his gold, right? Whereas like I didn't want that. It was always, okay, let's have that backlog and that extra cash and whatever, but like let's not operate that way, right? Like if we don't have to make a purchase, like let's not make it, or let's wait till the right time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And also like let's not use, this is huge, like let's not use growth to make success.
Mm-hmm.
That was the biggest thing, and I'd see
I
that
feel like
all
this
the time.
comes with experience, though. So
Uh,
when I asked the question, what drove you to kind of put this money aside, I feel as though that isn't the immediate thing when starting a business.
Sure.
That's not like the immediate, hey, I'm going to start a business. I want to prepare for God, if I fail.
Yeah.
Where it's like, whether it's a previous experience, personally, or someone that, a business that you worked for, or, a relative or a friend, or so. I feel like it's always based on that.
Yeah. So maybe some of that's true. I had other friends, young and old, that had their own businesses, construction or not. And I had seen a bunch of them go belly up. I've heard horror stories, and I kind of learned from their mistakes. And so the guys who knew I was going out on my own, they'd tell me, hey, look, when I had my construction company and it flopped, like this is what I was facing in the red zone. Like this is what happened. And I'm like, okay, how'd you get there? Right. Like, and they knew right away. They're like, oh, I did this. Like I bankrolled this and I shouldn't have, or I took on this job and I didn't have the manpower. I took on this and so it was like, I think
asked these questions.
Yeah. And I heeded the warnings. I was like, I don't want to end up like that. I don't, to talk about what I was talking about earlier, like there's a specific person in mind. He actually does my detailing. He had his own business, and he was like, look, he's like, the worst feeling you're ever going to have is telling someone you can't make payroll. He's like, that's the worst thing in the world. And he's like, and I racked up credit cards. I did everything I could to the last penny to pay those people, to the point where I couldn't anymore. And I'm like, I had nightmares about that. I'm like, I don't want to be there.
Right.
And I could, even knowing the guys that I have, the guys I work with, even subs, is like, I never want to have to tell someone, hey, look, I'm sorry, I can't do it, because of my own doing, right? Like other circumstances, if it's out of my control, like I'm still going to hate to do it, but I will, if it's my own doing, my own mistake I made, like I'll have a really hard time living with that. Telling a person, hey, I can't fulfill my commitment to you monetarily or deadline or whatever because of my own mistakes. So I tried to get ahead of that. So, the profit first system, the research I did, all that stuff was basically like I had seen and I had heard of the mistakes, right? I had heard horror stories, and I didn't want to end up like that. And I'm like, okay, well, if I can learn early enough to avoid that, then great. I'm going to try and do everything I can. And so, I mean, we're still pretty young in the game, right? We've grown pretty rapidly, but only because that growth has happened organically. We never, that was another failure point, is like, yeah, we bought 3 trucks, we hired 15 guys, we bought this, or we rented this huge shop. And then it's like, you have this machine that just requires food all the time. And okay, work's really good right now. For 6 months, you guys are growing and growing and growing, and you never wanted to say no to the work. But now, what if that work falls off, right? Like you're too early in the game to be like, oh, we've been around the block, we know what to do here. And it's like, I didn't want to get to that point. Yeah. So we always said, hey, like, let's always go for the bigger fish, but let's always make sure, like, we'll always take a risk. Like, we'll always go for something bigger and bigger and bigger, but not in an ego sense. It's always like, hey, I know we can do that. Let's find a way to do it.
But you'll do that without corrupting your current work.
Exactly.
So many people will talk to us and be like, yeah, I want to start this division, but I'm going to shut down what makes me money right now. And I'm like they want to do a spec house or whatever. No, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying in this.
No, we've had that conversation a lot.
But yes, people will call me and be like, yeah, I want to do this. I had a call last week, and I'm like, what do you do right now? He goes, I do renovations, but I have this opportunity to do that. I'm like, dude, then structure it now so you keep your renovation business going. Dabble in the spec thing until you can prove success with that spec. Otherwise, don't change the system that's been working for you. Right. But a lot of people will just jump on that train and go, that's where the money is. I'm going to do that, and then it fails, and now you have nothing to fall back on.
Right. And we, to speak to that as well, like I did have an early experience, right, when it was just me. a lot of what we do is like, I don't want to say it's half and half. It's always changing, but we do hourly work as subcontractors for bigger companies, supplementing their crews, or they just hire us directly for install work, right? We also do bid work, which is what we do for you, Nick. And the nice thing about that is, like, if we're doing bid work and maybe we're doing like AIA payments, right? If we're in between a major phase, like with steel, you guys don't need us there all the time, right? So we might do this phase, get paid, and then it might be a while before we get paid for anything else in that job, even though maybe we fabricated it already. The hourly work fills in. So it's like, okay, we have this supplemental work to keep us going. And that kind of helps us out. But early on, are you guys good?
Yeah.
Early on, when I was on my own, I was just subcontracting. I wasn't taking on much bid work. And I had worked for a contractor, and they basically burned me for like 6 weeks. And I, like an idiot.
What do you mean by that?
So I wasn't getting paid. They stopped payment. I knew the job was going bad for them. GC was threatening to throw them off, right? Meanwhile, their GC is... their supplier is offering me work, saying, hey, look, they're getting kicked off the job. Like, we could use you to finish not their scope, but we have a ton of change order work. And I'm like, look, this is a slimy slope. Like, I don't want to, I have a relationship with them. Granted, it wasn't going well between us. I'm like, I still have, I don't want to come into the game this early with this bad karma. Like, it doesn't seem like the right thing to do. And they were like, look, no, it's all completely change order work. They told us they don't want to do it, this and that. I had a long discussion with the owner of the company that I was working for. Mm-hmm. And he's like, no, you know what? He's like, we're not interested. He's like, I wish you luck getting paid from them. And I'm like, okay. And at the time, I had nothing else lined up. This commitment was supposed to run another 4 months, and they had ended it that week. And I'm like, so I spoke to both of them, had a meeting, both owners, and they were like, look, their scope is this is change order work. Everyone here is okay with this proceeding forward. And I'm like, okay, yeah, as long as everyone's happy, great. Started billing them directly. The contractor I was working for agreed that they would pay me out what they owed me at the end of this week, right? And I'm like, great. So they're demobbing, taking everything off site. Never happened. Kept dragging me out. It was like, oh yeah, the check's in the mail. You know how it goes. So I'm like, this is like my early beginnings, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm about to learn a lesson. Yeah. So I did. Luckily, the bigger company who hired me from them ended up making me almost all the way square from what they owed me. So like I came out really, really well, all things considered, right? Didn't burn any bridges. Still have a relationship with both of those companies. Unfortunately, they don't with each other. It went kind of messy after that. But it was a huge project, and it was a huge... learn. Actually, we did Southie right in the same time frame. I think I told you about it when we did Southie for you, and that was like the closest I've come to being like, oh, what? Like that's how fast and how badly I can get burned. And then after that, it was like, okay, I need to start writing contracts. I need to bill accordingly. I need to track everything accordingly. Like I was not doing this right. I was showing up with the tool belt on, being like, okay, yeah, I'm my own company now. And it's like, no, I wasn't. I was doing what I was doing before just for somebody else, right? And I didn't have the owner's mindset at that point. So then when that happened, it was like a wake-up call. It was like, okay, now I need to look back to all the research I did. I need to look back to all the guys who told me the horror stories, and I need to find a way to make sure this doesn't happen again. And it hasn't since, because knock on wood, right? So
I got rid of the vinyl base just so we could knock on it.
So that's it was all a learning process. Like some lessons harder than others. But
so you really made this shift, or you really had this mindset not so much in the very beginning, but in the beginning few months of your company.
A little bit
where that shift happened.
A little bit of both. Yeah, a little bit of both. Because when I was jumping out on my own, it was like, how am I going to pay my bills? And then once that stuff started happening, it was like, oh, it's not just my livelihood I need to worry about. It's this company.
Yeah, you had the mindset of what happens if I fail. But when you got into it, it's like, here's a taste of failure. How are you going to prevent that from happening again?
Right. And
you could almost see that whole road.
Yep.
And be like, that is what could have happened. Jesus.
Yep. Yeah, and that was on a much smaller scale. Like if I if we took that hit now, like it would be absorbable, right?
Right.
But it was scale wise. I mean, looking back, it was a big hit,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm very fortunate. I'm very glad that it happened when it did, right? Before I had employees and subs and a shop and all this other stuff, is like that could have been a much huger hit. I'm glad I learned the lesson that early. You know.
What specifically did you put into place to help prevent that?
Basically stronger proposals and actual contracts. You know what I mean? Like I went into that basically with a verbal agreement because I knew these guys. The erector that I was working for, I knew for a long time at the company I used to work for. I used to hire them, had this great relationship, and I went in their office, we talked terms, we talked everything else, and when I made the jump to go on my own, they were very supportive, helped me out with work, everything else. Then this big job came along and they were like, hey, look, we could use the manpower. And like they needed it bad. And that's part of the reason that the job went south is they just couldn't support it.
Sure. But you say you a stronger contract. Where did you get that? Or how did you develop it?
Just research, basically. I mean, I just started looking into it. I started talking to other guys in the industry that one of them in particular, he's out of Connecticut, really good friend of mine, that I reached out to him and I'm like, look, like I just nearly got burned, like made it out pretty well, but I need to protect myself going forward. Like, what do you do in this scenario? And before that, I was too proud. It was like, no, I don't need to do that. Like, I'll figure it out. And it was like, that was
Well, it's funny. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you almost lean more on the relationship that you had than you do like you have this trust for them. Where like nowadays, I will play nice in the pool, but like as soon as I sniff something, I'm like, we're done.
Yeah.
Like, I'll get a contract. We'll put a lien. I'll do all, like, it's still business. It's the same as having employees. It's like,
yeah. Like
when you said, hey, the guy said the check's in the mail, it's like, no. Like, now you can actually have the UPS, U.S. Postal? You can pay that thing.
Right.
You can see what mail's coming your way.
Right.
Every day. There'll be a photo. It's like, the check's in the mail? Funny. I have a printout that shows nothing in the mail from you.
Yeah.
So, like, you can call that bluff, and that grace period you gave him is like days, like 3 days instead of like 3 weeks. I remember one guy got burned in my old company, and he's like, I can't even lien the property. I waited so long that my 3-month window's over. Now I can't even lien it. I'm like, then sue the guy personally.
Yeah.
Like, I was like,
yeah,
I'm like always siding
by any
with
means. Yeah.
John, what is, because I feel like someone's going to ask that. What is that USPS thing?
U.S. Postal?
Yeah, no, I know what that is. This tracking.
No, so you can file for it. You have your address. I can't do it from my P.O. box, but if you have a regular address, well, maybe it's here. You can then go on, file for that, and you can have it'll send you an update every day of what mail has been processed from someone else that's heading to your location, and you can literally see, hey, so and so is paying me today.
Yeah.
And you can be like, all right,
that's all I need. More crap telling me what's coming.
no, but if someone says it checks in the mail,
Your
you don't
Harbor
trust
Freight
them.
catalog's on the way.
Yeah.
Unsubscribe, thank God.
Yeah, but it's, and even going forward, it was like we started working with better clients too. I kind of, in hindsight, I was like, I should have seen that coming from them. You know what I mean? And I couldn't, people even warned me, and I was like, no, they won't do that to me. Like, we have this great relationship, and it was like money. It was like, oh, I see the checks coming. Like everything be fine. And they did. They came every week. Everything was great until it wasn't. And so that was a learning curve.
The honeymoon stage.
The honeymoon
So
period, right?
You still sign contracts with all your anyone that you're subcontracted to at this point?
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
somebody you hire.
Yeah, it's weird because it's all different format, right? We do such a weird variety of work. But yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, everyone gets some sort of contract that says, it outlines the terms. And like the way I learned it was like if someone's insulted by you bringing a contract their way, then like that's a red flag. Like you probably shouldn't be doing business with them. It's like to me the contract isn't to break a relationship, it's to make it stronger, right? Is to be like, hey, look, here's a contract, like let's do this because we both
here's
know
what
the terms.
I'm going to give you.
Yeah.
This is what you give me in return.
And if there's hard feelings there, that's like an instant red flag. It's like, okay, then why is this insulting you, right? Like if you're not just going to hold up your end, like this shouldn't be an issue, right? So
Nick, do you sign his contract or does he sign your contract?
Currently, I think I signed his, but that changed.
Yes. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
just gonna say, I was listening
So,
to this whole thing. I'm like, I
no,
was taught years ago to never sign the subs contract. You need to then rewrite the scope.
Yeah,
and put your terms in place.
Yeah, we've spent the better part of, well, I want to say a year, but that would sound ridiculous. But months around this table developing the most incredible. No, but we've built the subcontractor agreement to make sure it's fair for both parties. Kind of outlining, just like you said, Ryan. It's outlining what you have told me that you're going to give me and what I've told you. Here it is on paper. So when we get into, a confusion, hey, we already outlined this. This is what we've agreed on.
Exactly.
But it's I mean, I would always sign the proposals.
Yeah,
for years, and it's like now that we're grown into a bigger company, we're doing larger projects. We have a lawyer on retainer. It's like that conversation comes up. My insurance company is like, hey, they're signing yours, right? Not the other way around. And it's silly things. It's just helping define the gray area.
Sure.
And, we can do that verbally, but like stupid shit. Like, who am I responsible for throwing away my lunch trash?
Right.
And it's like, I don't want it to come down to that, but it's in there.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. Like Benny wants to do that because Build a Trend can make it very easy for you to do that. And I'm like, let's be honest. The guy who signs that isn't the guy that's on site. So you're going to have, it doesn't prevent you from having to remind the people on site of what the obligations of their crews
and I
are.
don't think it should.
But I think a lot of people think that.
I would agree with that
You
statement.
sign the agreement, and the guy on site's like,
I was like,
looking
I
at
didn't
you
sign
like, what?
anything.
Yeah, so two things about that. One is like the way we do it as far as contracts go is like I don't write a contract for my GC, right? Like basically what I do is
Here's my proposal.
submit a proposal. Basically, here's my terms, my qualifications, my exclusions, payment terms, all that. Sign it, right? And then they take it, modify their contract with all my terms, send it to
and
me.
then add it as an exhibit.
Exactly.
You know what's funny is I almost never sign subs contracts, but like if it was like steel and that stuff where it's like, hey, it's based on this set of drawings with this date. It is almost different, but like my cabinet guy, I don't sign anything.
Yeah, like and that's
it's. I mean, I'm not trying to create a hierarchy here, but like there's a lot of, like my paint guys, no, and I don't want.
Well, I think from his sake, it's not furnished steel as drawn. It's furnished an HSS 4x4 with 3/8 wall, and it's
like you want to read his stuff.
It's like.
Well, and we're submitting shop drawings that have to be approved, right? So it's
Right.
not just like an initial contract. Here it is, and here it is. Let's do it. It's like it's
mean,
a dynamic movement.
If we want to talk about like the kind of the technical side of it, it's like the proposal means nothing.
Right.
We add that to the contract. It's really what you just said, the shop drawings. It's like you provide me, you draw out what you're going to do. And like what we do with our cabinetry, everything becomes shop drawings to a technical standpoint, to a technical side where if there's an architect involved, the architect's reviewing that and signing off on it.
Right.
Right.
And it's, Ryan, I think especially in your field with steel where, I would say steel is becoming more common in residential, but the residential that it is becoming common in is very architect driven.
Yes.
And ran much more like a commercial project.
Absolutely.
Where your commercial projects, your shop drawings are going through submittal processes, reviewed, or, sent back for revisions and will be reviewed again. And it's this very formal process where if you do skip that process and something isn't to the spec,
you're in deep.
It's you.
Yeah.
And
The person that skips it is the one that's liable.
Right.
I mean, we're doing a project, Mike's project. You guys just did the steel on it. There was a verbal conversation early in the job where it's like we were going to maximize our ceiling height. So we did everything we could to maximize the ceiling height. We have this recessed light fixture, so we had to drop down the ceiling a little bit. And I submitted, because Mike was out with the baby, I submitted an RFI for record, right? Like, hey, ceiling height ended up at this height. It was 3 inches lower than it was supposed to be. Talk about an email response I got about how it was my responsibility to rip all of our framing out and put it back if that's what the client wanted. And it was immediate, if my guys did it, I would have been like, guys, come on. Like, we know this is the process. But here I am
Yeah.
You know, trying to fill Mike's shoes while he's out, and I put basically the job not at jeopardy, but it probably would have cost us $5,000.
Threw it a curveball, yeah.
And it's like, and I remember I called the client. I was like, listen, I apologize. This is on me. Let me just walk you through. Like, if you want the ceiling higher, it's on us. We'll put it higher. And we walked through the reason why we lowered it down. She's like, no, that's what we wanted. That's what we talked about early in the job. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm glad verbally you remember that, but I'm you know, it's knowing that what could have went wrong.
Yeah.
Especially on like a heavily architect driven or commercial driven job.
Yeah, and that's like right, and that verbal thing will get you in trouble, right? Like we've talked about the whole time. And that's, to be honest with you, like you're talking about commercial projects being, and even bigger than that, being driven with a thicker process, right? I prefer that. Like I like that. And even my background, the companies I worked for was all like heavy industrial, heavy like larger scale construction, and it all ran like that. And it was almost like, okay, there's systems in place, follow the systems.
Yeah.
You know, it takes the unknowns out. And now, like dealing with you guys, we love that because that's already there. But like we'll get calls from smaller builders and it's like, hey, yeah, I need this beam here and this beam there and a couple of columns. And I'm like, okay, do you have drawings? Yeah, I'll send you a sketch. I'm like, oh, here we go. Like, and then it's like, you get the sketch.
Was that me?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's fine to get the job moving, but ultimately it comes down. It's like, well, what engineer are you working with? Well, I don't know. That's why I called you. Don't you know what size beam I need? And I'm like, well, no.
Right.
I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to size it. I'm not going to stamp it. Like
you're not accepting liability for it.
Exactly. And having those systems and working that fashion just makes it so much easier on our end. Like, and I'm sure yours too.
Yeah. I mean, I do. I think it is because of my commercial background, like the 4 years I did in it, but I did like that process, and I like the forethought and the really planning process, even though I skipped it here, right? But it's, John and I have talked about it and kind of have different opinions on it, where it's John, correct me if I'm wrong, like in a lot of ways you feel as though...
I thought it was a different John. Sorry. I just assumed it.
This dude's zoning out over here, if you guys can't tell. No, but we've talked about where it's like, I like the thought of pre-planning and we talked about panelization, an example. It's like, you've made the comment that it removes the creativity. It's like, what if I want to move something?
Yeah, Johnny strikes me as the type that's the Sharpie and bar napkin drawing guy on the job site.
But I think it still has to start with drawings. It has to start with an actual structure that you then can manipulate.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's not just crayons and...
Sharpie, he said.
No, but I think people will, in their mind, will diffuse that.
Just
down.
visualize blue and red crayons on a bar napkin.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It's tough.
Are you modifying steel drawings, or like are you?
No, but on the flip side, like the farmhouse build, the architect gave us engineered stamp drawings from an engineer that they had on house, and that whole back room had no steel in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I then took an engineer, brought an engineer in, and brought in a steel fabricator and said, I want to have a moment frame for this back room because it's all glass, it's all that. So yeah, it started with me having a sketch and identifying an issue, and it turned into shop drawings. But I don't do all that.
Right.
I'm not going to,
As you shouldn't.
I do delegate that very well, but I think a lot of people will take that on themselves. Like this, I found this problem, I have to own the whole thing. No, it's having the right people that you can then go, hey, this is what I think about this. Like I had them all in the same room. I said, hey, what do you think? I sent an email to start with to the architect. They're like, no, it's fine. I'm like, the experience I've had is that I am accepting the liability for this structure, regardless of the engineering. When the window doesn't open or the sliders don't open correctly, that's not the architect, it's not the engineer. I'll get the first call and I'll get the last call.
Right.
So it was like, how do I accomplish this? It started with a sketch because they were like, we want to put an 8-inch column in the corner. And I'm like, well, that kills the design. So it starts with that design that's on paper. And I'm like, so I had them both there. I go, hey, this is what we're looking at beyond paper. Mm-hmm. Is that how do I not compromise the design but still get us our shear structure that we need for this building? And they're like, oh, we'll bolt in here and here. So we added 2 columns on either side of the window that were smaller. So to the architect, when I went back to them saying, hey, I'm changing the plan, but you won't see any of this. So I guess it's not all.
Well, I think that,
crayons.
That's different. You're looking at something and trying to improve upon it. Where I guess it's not different than from the panelization comment, but I think that's really important, and that's where you as a builder strive, because it's most people would take, hey, an engineer stamped it and an architect drew it, we're good.
Right.
That same thing with us. There's always another way. Nick just showed you a project where we're trying to support the back of a possible brownstone without impacting the 3 levels of living or other units above while wiping out the wall below. It's a new job that we might not do, but the engineer that designed it said can't be done. You have to impact the unit above. They'll have to move out, blah, blah, blah. Why?
Right.
Why is that the only solution? I mean, there's no way that there. What if we couldn't get into that? What if there was absolutely no way? You just can't put a door underneath that.
Right.
There's always another way, and I think that's where, like I said, you strive as a builder is that you're contesting it and saying there's a better way here. There's another opportunity to do something better.
But more importantly, the fear that I come up with whenever I have this conversation is that, let's say it's not me on that site, because at some point it's not going to be me there.
How do you pass
How does the guy that's below that, or the superintendent that's out of college, they will go by the script that's been written for them.
Right.
Not have this inkling to go,
everyone
hey,
would love the answer to that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But
how
it's
do you
true.
pass that?
I would agree. We run into the same thing, and like we're in a different industry, right? So like with us, it's a little easier, especially T&M work. If we're working on a plant or some big facility, whatever it is, like a lot of the times the owners or the GC is like, hey, look, like this is what needs to happen. Like find a way to get it done. This is what the engineer wants. Okay. If we're under a time crunch, it's like we'll get into it and we'll realize like, oh, this isn't going to work. And then it's okay. Do we submit it off RFI, demob, shut down, all that? Or no, it's usually like get a hold of the GC, which in this case would be you guys. Hey, what do we do here? And they're like, and they get a hold of the engineer and they make it, and it happens almost right away. And you're right. Like that's a hard thing to train, right? To pass on to your foreman or super, whoever it is, to say like, hey, look, like in this wild card situation, don't just take the engineer's word, because it's like, how do you say, you can't say that.
Well, it's to speak to that, me personally, selfishly, I love getting on site and seeing a problem, being like, and seeing everyone trying to figure it out and being like, boom, this is how you figure it out. And in a way, they're like, oh, okay. Everyone looks at it. It's like, as me, I'm the owner, I'm the owner in that case, and I can just make the decision and we can move on. John probably in the same position, but it's,
right.
I leave there feeling like I'm on a high. It's like I just solved the problem for them.
I walk away going, everyone's overthinking this. This is blowing my mind.
No, but
I'm so disappointed.
This is what I'm getting at is by the time I'm in my truck, I'm like, wait, I can't be. What happens when they do that again?
Well, here's the thing too, though, is like we, right, the three of us, like we have that authority to do that and to ride the line. Whereas like
there's 4 here. Don't forget.
I'm sorry, Tyler. I'm sorry. We have the ability to ride the line as owners, right? To say like, okay, look, like I'm going to make this decision, and if it doesn't work, like, well, I own it, and I'm going to have to own it. Or like a foreman might go, like, they might have that idea in the back of their head, but they're like, oh, I can't do that.
Right.
I'm going to get in trouble, or that's just not the way it goes. It's like we have a little more flexibility, right? Like whether we do or don't. I mean, we own it that way because it's like, okay, at the end of the day, like I know the decision I made.
Yeah, you pay for it.
Whereas like, how do you push that to some? That's a tough line to ride, because it's like, hey, I want you to. You're either telling them, hey, don't always listen to the engineer, which like is a slippery slope, or you're saying like, no, always stick on the line. It's like you got to find that sweet in between spot.
I mean, I tell the guys all the time is you have to run it as if it's your own job in your own house. Meaning, I know you're within a company, but as if you were running your own show.
Yeah, and that's up to you to hire people that you can trust to make that decision.
I want you to trust your gut, because if that goes away and you're just going by the book, that's just a cubicle job.
Right.
It's understanding it, sniffing stuff out where, the best is when I'm talking with John and he's like, I'm not getting a word back from so-and-so, like the plumber Rick. And I'm like, send him a photo of the shower with the valves sitting there on the floor and everything marked out. And he goes, dude, he got right back to me. I'm like, yeah, you got to figure out how everything else is smoke to him until he sees reality. If it's there, guys will be there. It's just, how do you navigate people and teaching them that like, hey, that won't work for the electrician. And how does that not make sense? It's just everyone's their own personality. You have to approach it differently. But knowing that, hey, this is what I say all the time about going back to the Kevin O'Connor thing, is like that the sheathing running on a 45. And
still bringing that up.
No, but it's that if guys could figure out what the shear meant, the means and methods, then yeah, I would feel a lot more
How do you improve
comfortable.
on it? Yeah.
It's that, and it's not taking for granted that, hey, it's all about speed. Is that, hey, slow things down. Our job is to slow things down and make them methodical, so it's not pure chaos, because it can easily be that.
I think this is something. Actually, speaking to the video side of what we do, is that there's so much out there about how, like, let's use the shear wall, how to nail off a piece of plywood as fast, the fastest way possible. But what are you nailing the plywood off for? And why do you have to space them? So in the video side of what we do, we're trying to answer the why. And when people understand the why, the how is more visual, and it's just kind of second nature. It's like, if I understand that this plywood has to be nailed off every 3 inches because in a scenario like this is how it would react and this is how it prevents the possible issue, that means so much more to them than I can nail off a piece of plywood the fastest by doing this and that. And I think, to speak to what you said, how do you teach and how do you communicate that to your team? It's, one thing that we talk about is challenge, like, look at something. I'm not saying dwell over it. I'm not saying that you need to question every single detail, but if you look at something and it doesn't feel like that's the best way to do it, bring it up.
Yeah.
You have a better way? No matter who they are, engineer, architect, builder, sub, like, everyone wants to do something better.
Yeah.
But I look at it the other way, is that I agree with that. It's just also that I feel like architectural drawings, engineer drawings, those are being done by apprentices now, or, whatever it is. Draftsperson,
Junior
associates, and it's actually not being looked over as closely as they used to be.
Sure.
And so I look at it like, hey, you got to just dig into this, make sure everything looks right. If it doesn't look right, flag it, let me know. And the biggest thing about this whole thing, let's go back to the moment frame, is that, yeah, I think my guys could catch it, but it's when does it get caught?
Right.
Like, is it going to are you going to have to, like you said, demob? It's like, do we have to shut down everything because this wasn't caught in time?
Yeah,
and that's, I take offense to it as being a GC, that is my job, is to foresee issues, solve them before they come, so that way you don't hit the site and then it gets screwed up.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's like, right, because like if we have to demob and remob, like you're probably going to get a change order, right? Because it's going to cost us more money.
Contract.
And that's why like we like working with you guys.
I did,
because
and I paid that change.
we like working with you guys because like before
he pays for all those mobilizations.
Well, he pays his bills.
Yeah, Salty was that was hard.
That was a tough one, but right, like I showed up, I got the drawings, we looked at it, I shot right down there, and I met with Mike on site, and it was like, yeah, the drawings were there, I saw it, I bid it accordingly, but then when I got to site, Mike was like, hey, look, like this is how he shows it, but to me, it would be so much easier to not have to cut the beam fully out. He's like, why don't we just add a little more steel on this side, extend it over, like, and essentially it saved us a ton of time, but we didn't have to, how do I word this? We add a little bit more steel, but we saved a ton of time, right? So like everyone won in the end. And the fact that we met there for half an hour beforehand, just to discuss like this tiny issue is like, Nick, you weren't even there, but like NS like shown through, right? Like Mike was like, hey, look, like I know this is how it's drawn, but like, what if we did it like this? And it's like, yeah, that works great. It's easier for us, saves you guys time, saves everybody money. Like that's great. And that's what the conversation should be about.
Yeah, I mean that, and I think, Mike being here the longest, we've had those conversations over and over, and it's like, Ken, I remember when he started, he would ask question after question after question until he got comfortable making these decisions. Mm-hmm. And then it came to the table where it was like, hey, just so you know, this is what we did because this made it better.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And yeah, it's a weird thing because like I run into the same thing with going back to like teaching your people how to make those decisions. Like I do with Jeff's my right-hand man, right? Like you've met him a bunch of times.
Yo, Jeff.
So like he gets it. Like we've worked together for so long, even before this company existed, right? We worked together. And so we've always had that dynamic together.
Does he have a nickname?
I don't know. He's Cooper's twin brother. I know that.
Yeah, I know that, but you don't call him Jeff on site.
Mills? or Millsy.
Oh, yeah, okay.
yeah, probably Millsy.
I was like, I've never met.
Probably Millsy.
I've
yeah.
never been introduced to a Jeff.
Yeah. So, we've always had that. Like, I don't have to question that with him, right? Like, a lot of times if it's a big decision, if it's something he's not fully comfortable with, he'll call me and be like, hey, look, this is what I'm thinking. Like, I want to have you kind of look at it. And I'm like, yeah, great. Like, let's do it. Or it's like, no, like, I see where you're coming from, but we probably shouldn't do that. And a lot of times, like with you guys, you have architectural details in mind. A lot of times we don't. It's like, hey, what's going to be the strongest, the most efficient?
Right.
Like, a lot of times it is like, hey, we need to stick to that engineer book because, like, we don't want to assume liability on this W16 by 77 in Southie House.
That's the mesh between a steel guy and a builder, right? Where we're trying to be in both sides of obviously this needs to support something, but we do have some architectural freedom. Yep. Where it's like why not sway on the creativity side and be more architecturally?
Because you want to panelize everything.
No, I don't want to. I'm not. Here's me backpedaling. I'm not saying I want to panelize everything, but I don't think that detail has to be done in the field. We can be more architecturally pleasing with something in that planning process. Yeah,
and I mean, to go back to that too, is like we don't strictly do structural steel. So if we're spitting out like railings or missed metals or anything like that stuff is seen, right? So there are things that we can't wait until we're 3 flights up a stairway and go, oh, you know what? This railing transition should have been done like this.
But your structural steel now, like especially in design now, oftentimes is becoming architectural steel.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Where, see Chris from Apex, he just did that giant moment frame, and those guys were in there sanding and bondoing and painting it.
Yeah.
And it's becoming more of an architectural detail where you get the drawings.
If it's done right.
Of course.
I'm just saying, like, there's so many times we were like, we just cover that up because that's god awful. So I mean, it's a testament to what you do.
But we like architecturally exposed structural steel is a thing, right? Like so a lot of times our stuff's getting.
But
covered
is that being spec'd out?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So not every time. Like with you guys. Yeah. So no, most of the time
Nick does it. Nick covers it up.
Nick always covers it. He doesn't like my paint jobs.
Behind that wall right now is the sexiest piece of steel.
I would love to expose it.
So and that's like we have a job we're bidding right now that has a fair amount of architecturally exposed structural steel, and it's like HSS tying into columns, weld everything all the way out, and then blend it fully so it looks like it's all one piece. Like that's architecturally exposed structural steel.
Yeah.
That we get into some of that, and like a lot of that, like you said, has a lot of that forethought involved. It needs to have it, but like if it's a composite deck we're doing and it's just a bunch of infill beams and Nelson studs and deck that's going to get covered in concrete, like the name of the game is make it strong and get it in there fast.
Can I go back to the whole pre-planning and meetings thing?
Yeah, because you've been quiet since.
No, I just...
It's been stewing.
I've been repeating my thought over and over again so I don't lose it. I think there's a fine line on pre-planning and wasting time. Like, I think they could be the same thing, and then actually people will focus on being there in the space and going, hey, this is going up. Now they deep dive, because in the beginning in pre-con, you're reviewing so many things. Mm-hmm. It's like reviewing stuff with a client. I know I'm only going to get their attention span for so much. So how much do you do pre-planning? And I just don't have a lot of faith and value in that over the years. I would just rather go, all right, do a quick meeting about the project, and if I need to bring you in, have that Mike Hume meeting, because I think that's way more productive than, hey, let's go over this drawing for the 10th time, and what are we seeing? You see anything? No? Okay, so we're good to go. Like, I feel like that's half those meetings, is that somebody who's a superintendent or a PM who's unqualified and has no idea what they're reading will basically bring you in to see if you see anything wrong with it, and then move it forward based on what you say.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. And the for me, like, I'm a visual learner, right? And the same thing goes for design. So even though covered up, you're not going to see a bit of that steel. The good thing is, like, you don't. I completely just lost my train of thought.
What was the sign language for?
Sorry,
don't worry about it.
You guys are gonna hear blank space, but he threw out a name.
So just because even though that was going to be covered up, like we still met on site ahead of time, and I could look at those drawings all day, the details, the architecturals, the elevations. I would have never caught what we caught as soon as we stepped in the room, right? Now that everything's stripped, I'm literally looking at the exact same layout I did on the plans, but I'm like, oh, now that I'm here, it makes perfect sense. Like, it makes way more sense to not cut there, cut over here, like extend this way. Like, and Mike saw it immediately.
Yeah.
And so once I got down there, it was like, oh, like Johnny said, you could spend 10 hours around a planning table looking at drawings with the best detailer in the world.
Yeah.
Sure.
You're not going to see it until you see it, right?
And you can argue about a detail that makes sense for the PM if they're qualified, and you guys could have a righteous fight over it until you're on site. Having that, whether it's 2 weeks prior or after demo, having that 30-minute meeting, I think is way more productive than having these round tables off-site, trying to make everyone feel better about the situation. It's just a Band-Aid. And I've just found that kind of rolling through it and having shorter meetings and more of them on site with the right people is way more productive for all parties.
Yeah, agreed.
It's just,
I don't, I'm not saying that everything has to be dialed in.
I wasn't directing it towards you.
No, I know, but that this is, I want to be clear in what I believe, right? Because a lot can get lost in the drawing. Perfect example is that Mike's project is that, when I'm looking, when I looked at the pictures, I was like, what do you mean this steel? Like, no, there was no note about steel. I get on site, I'm looking at it, and how are we going to move this? And then it was drawn. It's like, that doesn't make sense. Then we're on site. Okay, now this makes sense. You're in the space. You get it. From a drawing, and same thing with the drawing, and I'm looking at finish, like maybe a baseboard detail. On the drawing, looks great. Because it's micro detailed, up close, personal. This is what makes sense. Does it make sense in the space? We don't know yet. But this is where I think the rendering and three-dimensional stuff works, where we're looking at a new job, new house build, and I'm looking at the drawings. I'm like, all right, a lot of this seems to make sense. And then she's like, I have it in 3D. Well, let's walk through the rendering. Pulls up the rendering. I'm like, okay, 100%. This makes way more sense now. Now I get how the roof line and the skylight meet the stairwell. Like, all of this makes sense because you're seeing an end goal where you're looking to John, to your point, it's when you're looking at the micro details, there's no communication to what that does to the space, where it's, if you're able to be in the space, whether it is real time or digitally rendering, you are way more apt to understand what the thought was, and you can kind of backtrack from there. So in that, in the pre-planning, if you have the opportunity to see the space and be in the space, whether it's real or virtual, that's where you start backtracking and saying, this is how we get to that point.
But to your point, I think I'm thinking in my head smaller scale stuff where it won't impact the actual, whether it's a staircase, whether it's millwork that's wood beyond steel. I'm thinking of it that way, where you have the luxury of kind of manipulating in site, not losing time on site. But for a lot of stuff that you have where it's steel, where, I'm thinking about the big dig we did a couple years ago. Like, I'm not waiting until the walls go up on that thing. Like, that steel was like, I don't know, 10-week lead time. Like, you're almost going backwards, meaning the steel is the guy predicting and making everything happen. So we have to form everything to those weld points and all the stuff you're embedding in the concrete. It's not like, all right, I'll build the walls and then I'll order the steel.
Right.
It was like, no, you order all these massive steel beams because that's the thing that dictates everything, and then you're going to go backwards into that. So, again, I'm not backtracking, but I'm just saying that someone listening to this going, whoa, I can do steel. I can just, fly by the seat of my pants. It's not the case.
Well, go ahead, Tyler.
I feel like it also depends on the way that you're bidding a project, because the way that you guys are approaching a project may be different than somebody or a smaller scale project where it's closer to lump sum, where a lot of those details have to be finalized to get pricing.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, a lot of it, we can look at the drawings and get a pretty firm idea where we need to be, and kind of like play it safe. Like, okay, worst case, I know this beam pocket. You know what I mean? Like, you can look at those details just from experience and say, okay, I know on drawings I'm not seeing this, but I know what this detail is going to look like, right? And we can always RFI it, but like, let's assume the worst. So let's assume the longest period of time for that connection, whatever it is. So we can do that. But you're right. Like, it always comes later when you see those details and you go, oh, okay. Like, and this is funny because thinking back what you're just talking about not seeing it on the drawings and then getting into the visuals, this is really funny. But like Southie was that way, right? Like I looked at that job and I was like, okay, no big deal. Like there's a beam in the ceiling and there's a couple of columns. Like, all right. In my head, I'm like, I can bring a boom truck in, like pick the steel off the trailer, drop it in, bolt it up. And then we get to the Southie and I'm like, oh, this is going inside the existing house on the first floor. And there's no slider or anything. Like there's a door and a window. Like,
And you're on a bus route.
yeah, you know, the bus comes every 15 minutes. Like, but like, so those are the things that I can look at that drawing and be like, oh yeah, 2 columns, a beam, no problem. Because most steel guys like look at that drawing and they go, okay, cool, crane, trucking, 2 columns, a beam, some bolts, field labor, paint, whatever, cool, put it together. But it's like, if you bid that job like that and then you get down there with your crane and you have no communication and you just like, you price it that way, you submit that bid and they sign it, and then you get down to the site and go, oh wait, whoa, what do you mean I can't use a crane here? I can't fit a crane here. Like what are you talking? Oh, I have to go in the basement. Like you can look at a plan view all day and see a beam and columns, but like until you look at the site. And I think a lot of people make that mistake. It's crazy to think about.
What?
And the PM's not going to catch it and go, oh, well, he didn't have a crane. Why don't you have a crane in this bid?
No, he's going to be happy because he got such a good discount.
But I think back to, not to keep talking about all our projects together, but Newton, right? So you did the steel on that project. And from a pre-planning and coordination thing, we could have been better at. But the architectural drawings were taken so far; they were submitted to a structural guy. He drew the structural. Everything made sense until we put it together.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, we're framing the first floor, and the flange of our steel is sticking through our subfloor.
Yeah.
Which thankfully we were able to fatten the wall, and we were able to work it in architecturally. But that was a miss. That was a straight, that was never, it wasn't coordinated to a level of detail where it would have ever been caught, because all it was designed is, here's architecture we want it to look like. What do we need to, what size steel do we need to support,
to achieve it?
A garage door that size? And that's where that pre-planning, that's what kind of, triggers me to think, like, if we had just brought this to a higher level of coordination, this would have been caught.
Yeah.
I feel like it's, and again, I don't know the situation, it's just a higher level of focus. Meaning that same meeting with the same amount of focus with the right experience would have caught that. I don't know if one more meeting would have done it.
Yeah, and I mean, we run into that too. Is like it's not always a level of care. Like it's also timing, right? Like we get a call and or an email and it's like, hey, like put a price on this. Well, okay, like when do you need it in? Like tomorrow morning. Whoa, wait a minute. And like you can buy another day or whatever, but like you don't. Especially if the job's 2 hours away. Like I don't have time to go look at the job and meet with them, and they don't have time to do it. And it's like, okay, so that's when I go, okay, like worst case scenario, what are we gonna run into on this? Like, and that a lot of that stuff can be firmed up over the phone or an email or whatever. But a lot of times, like you're flying, you're just going, okay, like, and you called me right before this last job. You were like, hey, I have this job. We're looking at it right now. It's like these beams, and I'm on site working at the time, and I'm like, you're like, just give me like a ballpark, and I'm like, and then that's like the hardest thing to do, right? But I know working with guys like you, it's easier because I know, okay, I can throw him this ballpark. He's not going to hold me to it. We can meet next week, look at it, and get a realistic feel for this. Like that usually works out pretty well.
Well, I think in Tyler, John, in my case, it's, we're doing that because we're trying to field whether this is going to be a feasible change or not.
Sure.
We've come to the client with a situation where it's, hey, we're going to run into steel, and I know they're going to ask us what this is going to cost. So we know what it's going to take from our side. Let's get a rough idea from the steel number. Hey, this could be, a $50,000, change order. Are we comfortable proceeding that route, or should we talk to the architect about redesign?
Right.
That's what it John, and you're probably similar, where it's like you're trying to basically come to the table answering all their questions before they're asked.
And you guys are giving them what you think is worst case scenario in that event anyway, right?
It's not necessarily even has to be posed as worst case scenario. It's like, this is
realistic.
Yeah, this is probably what this is going to cost.
Mm-hmm.
Are we getting the comfort out of it? And it's either no, we're going to redesign, or okay, let's get pricing on that. Or,
It's like right before you do a change order. It's like I'm not going to have my PM do all this stuff, write it all up, have a new drawing made, RFIs, all that. Be like, you know what? Just get a ballpark.
Right.
Are we talking $6,000 or 60?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where are we at? And then you say, hey, we're thinking this, and they go, yeah, write that up. And then you're not all. There's enough time on a job site where you can not do change orders and just focus on the build.
Sure.
So if you can kind of cut the fat a little bit and just be like, all right, what do I need to do? Yeah, you make phone calls. I mean, that's why I love keeping my data, because I try not to call guys just because I know how busy they're gonna be, and they're just gonna do the same thing I'm doing. They're gonna be like, So how do I make the same decision with the information I have? So if the last 6 steel jobs were this amount of like linear foot of steel, blah blah, I'll then create a linear foot kind of multiplier that I can then use. This is the same or better guess than you have when you're sitting on a boom in the middle of doing something, where I can go, all right, I told the client, from the last 5 jobs we've done with steel, this is what we're coming up with based on those numbers. Instead of saying, hey, call the guy who's half into it, give me a number on the phone. Yeah, take it, whatever. This is what I came up with. If you want to proceed, it's like that spreadsheet that we talk about all the time is my Bible. That's probably the biggest reason why I didn't want to go towards Build-A-Trend, is that like that resource I have is now I have to go back to my notebook and go, all right, what was that multiplier I had? What's this? So I'm still having a hard time with that, where I'd rather just.
I don't think you need to lose that. I think it's not so black or white. I mean, I'm not,
Right now, that is my system, where I get my spreadsheet, it's all in there, and I just know in top of my head what my multipliers are. When I go to Build-A-Trend, I'm dumping in my actual numbers. Literally, on my screen, I'll have Build-A-Trend, I'll have all my spreadsheet numbers, and I'm just going, dun, 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 dun. I'm plugging them in, and I'm like, I just love you the way you are. Like, I love that Excel spreadsheet. Like, why do I want? I'm cheating on it right now.
At the same restaurant.
Yeah, just killing me.
Not anymore. All your offices are closing down.
Yeah, I know. No Panera.
You have to get the home office finished up.
You can work here.
Honestly, that's what I said to myself today. I was just like, how many people right now are going, wow, I wish I had a better house to work home, to go home to be held up in.
That's what I got done. I got there early today. Everyone was leaving early. I was like, all right, I'm getting out of here. I'm not going to hang around. And my wife's like, well, what are you coming home for? And I'm like, because I'm done work. And she's like, oh, okay. Like, I'm never home at a normal time. So, like, what are you trying to pawn me into doing right now? Because everyone's home. The girls are home now. She's like, well, maybe can you do this with them when you get home? I'm like, all right, whatever.
Got to go to the shop.
Yeah. So I'm walking them around backyard doing school projects with them because I got home like an hour and a half early.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like every day I wake up now, I like immediately start looking for like the news, like what happened overnight when I went to bed that I need to be aware of, that I'm not walking into something crazy.
Yeah, I just wait for the alerts to come up on my phone.
Yeah, same.
We were all sitting on the job site today, and it was my brother, the electrician, and the plumber. And my plumber's older. He's probably, he's in his some sort of radio show that I feel like was like an NPR type show. And one of those emergency, what the heck is he doing?
He's getting beers.
Oh, one of those emergency alert systems comes on the radio, and we're all just sitting there and in the wake of everything that's going on. It's like, we're like, all right, what's going on now? Like, this can't be good. And then it just ended up being a test. But
dude,
it's like, all right, everyone get back to work. It's just a test.
So seriously, what are those for? Is that just when aliens land that will actually work?
It's always a test of the emergency alert systems.
Yeah, I'm like a day to put content behind it.
It's fine hearing them day to day, but when you're sitting there and it comes on today, you're like, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
So Tyler, do you have a lot of steel in your projects? Whether like structural or miscellaneous?
No. We do. I do. Yeah. So like we do mostly small interior remodels, and not. I mean, I feel like everything's an old house, and we're not doing like massive remodels where we're trying. Even if we're opening stuff up, the spans and the houses and the rooms. Like, it's older houses, everything's chopped up. We're not opening stuff up enough and spanning larger distances that we usually can't get away with some sort of even just lumber at that point.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And then I don't do any new construction work. So,
Well, I felt like that was a slap in the face.
Yeah, let me know if something changes. We'll come down.
Yeah, well, you're coming to Pennsylvania, so
I feel like I'm doing things backwards.
Away.
I got Pennsylvania guys coming to me.
See that?
For my metal.
I know.
See that? Yeah, Johnny doesn't know it yet, but we have a steel job coming up together soon. So.
We probably do. It's
No, we haven't gotten into it. If it were anything, like it's very minor type stuff that we're getting into.
Like railings and stuff, or
not even railings, just structural stuff. Like if it's a flitch beam or something like that, not anything crazy.
Yep.
Not even posting at that point. It's I feel like just general remodel work. Yep. We don't do the crazy jobs like Nick and John.
I gotcha.
No. But you could come down to do John Marley's jobs.
Yeah,
I feel like John Marley's jobs have enough steel. You could move a crew down here.
Tell me more,
dude.
John,
where's he at in that build right now? Is he at Mechanicals? Where's he at?
I don't know. He's off social media.
Seriously, what's the deal?
I can't disclose the reasons.
Oh my gosh.
Nobody spoke with him?
I haven't talked to him.
John Marley.
He's off social.
He texted me out of the blue, maybe on Saturday. If you need to get a hold of me, I'm off all social media. It's almost like you're baiting me. Why are you off social media?
That's not true. He literally added me on LinkedIn yesterday.
Oh, he's off Instagram and Facebook. I think he was.
He switched to all professional.
He was running into some issues with the girlfriend, I think.
Ooh.
So he's off.
He's going to turn that back on with so many DMs.
Right. But they do a fair amount of steel.
Now, is he a custom builder down there?
Yeah.
So he's like a project manager for a custom builder.
I got
but
you.
a lot of their houses are pretty high end.
Really high end.
Now, what area?
Yeah.
PA.
Pennsylvania. I don't know if they're like mainline. Philly suburbs on the Pennsylvania side, though.
Okay. Yeah, we're going down to Bethlehem. I guess like mid-April for a few weeks.
Is it a new job, like a new house?
No. It's actually industrial. It's a LNG plant. We have a bunch of big crane stuff to do down there, some rigging and some welding and stuff. So I think we'll be down for a couple of weeks, come back, and then head down for a couple more, I believe.
What's your goal with your company as far as
scope?
Yeah, like what would you love to do every day?
What we do, basically, like it before it was like, hey, give us anything. Like we have roots in heavy construction or heavy equipment repair, which we'll still do, but like now our specialty is like basically what we do with you guys, like structural steel. The bigger the better. A lot in residential. Like what we're finding is our niche is like basically, like I said, like what we do for you, the big stuff that the framers don't really want to touch. That like we can come in and do that. The big steel guys, the Novels, the Uniteds, they don't want to touch it because it's too small. But the small guys don't want to touch it because they usually don't have the equipment or means to do it.
Because I feel like a lot of guys I've talked to that have similar companies to you are all striving to be, the next Stearns. Like erecting high rises.
Right. Yeah, and like it's funny, like so we went to Jersey, we did a 52-ton residential down there, like on the water, right? Which is, I know it's funny. We did a 44-ton in New Jersey in Maniloking, right on the shore.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then we also did one in Connecticut that was 44-ton, structural as well, residential as well, poured slab and everything. So like we do heavy industrial, commercial. We don't just do residential, and I think that's
you like the mix.
Yeah, we love it. Like the bigger the better. Bigger the crane, bigger the steel, the better.
Good to be diversified.
Yeah, and we'll still do like we'll do Miss Metals, right? We'll do railings, we'll do stairs. We just got a big project with a company up by us for a wastewater treatment plant. All their structural and all their Miss, right? Stairs, platforms, ladders, and structural steel.
That's what my wife used to do.
So
design those.
Design the steel.
Wastewater treatment plants.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, we touched just about everything, but that's kind of what we're focusing on, and like a lot of heavy crane specialty rigging type stuff. There's a lot, like we have a ton of experience in that.
Do you like tie knots? How's that work? Like
yeah,
rigging?
yeah, we
Like,
can
that's
we
all
can
you
tie
got.
a couple of knots. Yeah, no. So we'll do like heavy equipment, heavy machinery moving, right? Like we'll set big compressors, big skids, stuff like that. Just about anything. If we can bring a
Are
crane
you guys
in-
working with? Are you working with union contractors?
No, we are open
Okay.
shop.
Any plan?
For union? No, not at the moment.
Any plan to buy a crane?
Yes,
How big?
I'm not telling.
Come on. No one's going to know.
No, I don't know. We've tossed around the idea with
Only like 7 people listen to this thing.
5.
we've tossed around
Well,
the
I
idea.
listen to it, you listen to it. That's 7.
I didn't this week.
I'm not going to say a name because I think he's kind of local, but I was looking at a knuckle boom from someone down here, which would be sweet. But we're also looked at boom trucks. and
Well,
everything
you're
else.
safe because there's 4 crane companies across the street. So
Well, that's probably one of them,
Yeah.
honestly. But no, as of right now, we have a really, really good relationship with our crane company
Cool.
up by us.
Like, I feel like I don't want to buy a used crane.
No,
Like
I feel
just
like if I was a steel guy, I wouldn't want it. I would want a crane friend. Like I want a
That's-
friend with a boat. I don't want to buy a
exactly,
boat.
and that's what I have. I have a
Because
really good friend.
that's the same thing. It's like they get super expensive.
Liability.
They're cleaning them when they're not being used.
Yep.
That it's like a big expensive boat.
So we have a really good relationship with the company we work with. Really good friends of ours, and they basically they need to keep their cranes moving. So they'll call us and say, "Hey, look, we have this job. We need an erector." Great, and then I'll
Cool.
call them and say, "Hey, look, we're setting steel. We need a crane." And now it's kind of just like second nature. So
So
works
will
out
you
really well.
hire a crane operator, or would that be in-house?
No, it comes with the rental. Oh, you talking about if I bought a crane?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
no,
do you have to be certified? I would imagine to be doing.
you do. Like New Hampshire is kind of more cowboy side. You can kind of get away without it. There's no strict licensing. But Mass, you need like Mass hoisting licenses and everything.
That was the big thing for the big dig. Didn't have enough crane operators back in the day.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
know,
So anybody.
you know, the guy John Marley we were talking about. His dad, all he does for a living is repair cranes, like in the field. So they fly him. I feel like it's all over the world. If a crane goes down, that he'll go on site and repair the crane rather than like having the downtime.
Wow. What's his dad's name?
Mr. Marley.
Mr.
Yeah,
Senior
Mr. Marley. Bob. I don't know. I could text them.
No, that's all right. Just curious. Yeah.
That's
so-
like that's what his dad does for a living. He just like basically they fly him all over the world to repair cranes that are in working order that break down all of a sudden just so they don't have the downtime. And I think that they pay him unreasonable costs to get them back up and running because
Yeah, I believe it.
those
Sure.
bigger sites without an operational crane, it's just like bleeding money.
Well, aside from that, I mean, the crane itself, the rentals are just, cranes aren't cheap.
No,
whether
I
you're
think
renting them or buying.
if I remember right, when we did the high rise, it was I think for the crane itself was $15,000 a week.
Yeah, that seems right. Yeah.
It was a tower crane.
Yep.
But it was just that was the rental per week,
Right.
and
right.
then the operator, everything. And I
Yep.
remember when that thing went down, the job stopped.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And it was funny. They approached it very cowboy. Originally,
When you say the tower crane went down, you should probably specify
the electric motor burned
Okay.
out.
because they've been known
No,
to go down.
It did not fall down. But they set up a winch up on the
On the-
crane, and they were
Yeah.
gonna winch up a new motor,
Mhm.
and we were all like, "What?" And they got up to the highest floor that they had erected, and realized not a good idea. We'll get a crane. So they set up a crane in the street the next day
Yeah.
and hoisted it up. But it's like that. Tyler, to your point, it's like time is money. And
Yeah.
not only that, but now you have to get a permit to shut down the street. You have to get another crane for $10,000 that's going to be able to reach 300 feet up.
Yep.
Just to replace a motor. It's like this has to be done as fast as possible.
Yeah, we've had it. You'd be amazed. Like this doesn't sound good, but you'd be amazed how often cranes break down. Like we've had on certain jobs. I mean, we'll be like mid pick. We'll have a 15,000 pound skid or whatever it is up in the air, and it's like, what's going? You're telling the guy to swing, and he's not swinging. You're like, what's happening? And he's like, he's signaling you like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And now the crane's off, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't know. It's a computer
Dude,
issue. It's
all
this.
set.
Yeah.
Like I want to see a brand new one show up every time.
And here's the thing. Here's the craziest thing. I've seen more brand new cranes break down than I have old. Dead serious.
But
I'm
Slight,
sure.
gently used.
Always
slight.
always computer issues.
Well, I was gonna say it's
Yeah.
usually not a mechanical thing. It's usually
No.
a limit stop.
Yeah, or it's a fuse or something
Right.
dumb. But yeah, typically it's electrical or
I
electronic.
feel like it's the same thing with the old trucks. All the old trucks run forever, and anything new's breaking down because all the emissions crap.
Yep.
It's wild. Those tower cranes are crazy, man. We did. We had one pick. It was at max reach, 34,000 pounds. And I remember when he unloaded the truck, when he boomed down, the top of the tower flexed in 10 feet
Yep.
closer to the building.
Yep.
And we're just all watching because it was the biggest pick of the job. And I'm like, what in the world? And it's like the thing comes down, lands, and the crane's like,
Yeah, you can hear the crane take a deep breath.
it's so wild. And
Yeah, it is.
Brian was his name. It was so cool to see him. He'd swing the body of the crane and he'd stop knowing that it would swing another 10, 15 degrees
Yep.
and land right where it needed to be. And it was so fluid.
It's an
I'm
artist,
very
man.
impressed by that stuff.
Yeah, crane dynamics is like it's one of our most favorite things to work with. Is like there's a lot. Yeah, okay, the hand signals. You can tell them to go up, go down, swing, but there's a lot of dynamics that come along with it that you don't understand until you've worked with them for a while, right? And like
Right.
it's things like that. Like, okay, you need to maybe perfect example is like if you're picking something up heavily off the ground, right? You don't center the hook directly over the load or the center of gravity. You center it, you basically have it more towards the crane itself, because what happens is as he puts load on that crane, it's going to pull the boom down forward, right? So
And
you need to plan
knowing
for
that.
things like and so there's so many different dynamics, and there's different cranes, right? So like there's just so much to know. It's its own science, and
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Like that's our favorite thing to do is just anytime we can set up a crane, we're just like full of joy. It's just a blast. You're always learning something.
We were in Naples a couple weeks ago, and I forget the name of the boulevard. It was like Galvin, or not Galvin. That's in Boston. It was a G, I think. But
You could make something up. No one would know.
no, anyone
Just call
anyone
it,
that's
like,
in Naples
Williamsburg.
is gonna correct us, and I hope you do. But there's this
The one of
this
5 people.
strip, and we're driving, and we're like, are these houses? And we start looking them up. It's like 25, 35, 47 million. And all of a sudden we get to one, and there's 2 tower cranes set up on this job. And I'm like, it has to be a hotel. So I look up the address, and it was like listed for 60 million, sold for like 48 million. They ripped the house down, and they're building a new house.
Wow.
And I'm like, Meg, there's 2 cranes, 2 tower, like permanent cranes, no tires, tracks, set up on this job building a house. And she's Instagramming me, making fun of me, saying this is all you do is look at houses and them being built. But it's just so wild, and I can see why anyone would like the boy in us loves equipment.
Oh, it's so
right?
much fun. Yeah, it's so
It's
much
like John,
fun.
like your new build with all the logging equipment. It's like that's so exciting to see
it's
that.
kids in a sandbox,
Yeah.
right?
Dude, I was on site for the farmhouse building. We were backfilling a retaining wall, and the guy was putting stone. I was just leaning against the window watching the guy drop stone into the hole. And someone came up to me and was like, "You done watching stone fall in the hole?" I was like,
Nope.
There's something so calming about this that I'm like,
Yep.
And then at one point, there's like 6 of us watching this guy backfill, and the room's all glass. And they're like, "Does he think something's wrong?" And I'm like, "No, he's like a Zamboni driver. Everyone just assumes it's cool to watch." I was
So
like,
funny.
You know what's really bizarre is I visited Iceland in
tongue
January.
rings.
Yeah, that too.
And
So, and we're back. So I visited Iceland in January, and what I found was like all
Ice.
well, no,
No, it's
actually, not a lot of
opposite.
ice.
That's
It's opposite.
Greenland.
That's Greenland, dude. So all the builds, like condos, even smaller homes, all had mini tower cranes on them. I might have seen one lull. There were tower cranes everywhere, and it was the windiest place I've ever been in my life.
the one like they stack all the counterweights on the ground, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're all remote control.
Yeah.
There's a guy down below controlling the crane, the tower crane.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
get in that shit either.
It was great, but some of them were only like 40 feet tall. They were
Hey,
like mini
fun fact: John doesn't like cranes.
or heights.
Not when
Or
they're a piece
tongue
of
rings.
crap.
Who said they were a piece of crap?
I'm assuming.
They were still standing. I mean, it was crazy, but they were everywhere up there. I was really surprised, especially with the wind.
I love I have a really deep want to build contemporary, modern cantilevered stuff, and we talk about it all the time. But it's like, you know,
he talks about it all the time.
But Ryan and I talk about it.
Oh, you guys do?
Yeah, he's
Oh, that's
like,
cute.
hey, he's like, I know I'm just doing this one beam on a job. I'm like, don't worry, one day we're gonna build this.
Yeah, he
And I
always
send him
teases me.
And I send him a photo of like a house with like a 20-foot.
He does that when you're pricing it.
Yeah,
There's lots more of this to come. Okay, all right? Give me a great number on this. Before you know it, we'll be building big houses.
All my guys are like, oh, cool, another NS job. Here we go. We're gonna get the big one soon.
But it's like I love seeing the trend towards using more steel, like John, the moment frames, and Marley's project. It's like windows are getting bigger, spans are getting bigger. The way to accomplish that is with steel, and just the use of it, and the not acceptance, but the fact that it's just becoming more normal, makes residential construction, I think, way more interesting.
Yeah, and especially like coastal, we're seeing a ton of it, right? Like everything's going to be beefed up, obviously. All the coastal stuff we've done has been really big steel, big spans, and we love it. Like we love pulling up with a crane and being able to just like set and go, and the easy fun ones, but also love the challenging ones where it's like, okay, like we can't get a crane here, so how are we going to get it from the trailer up there in the ceiling, stuffed in tight? Like that's all those challenges just make it such a blast. And then when the bigger ones come down the line, or the more challenging ones comes down the line, it's like, all right, piece of cake. Like, you know, it's enjoyable. It's always good to see different stuff like that. So yeah, but I am really looking forward to doing a big one for sure. It'll
pay off someday. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So you're still welding yourself up there?
Yeah. The funny, like,
How old are you?
30.
How long do you think that's gonna last?
Being 30?
No. the cool with being up there and welding and all that. Will that last forever?
No, it's funny. So it's already tapered down. I've spent a lot of the past months in the office, kind of just getting ahead of stuff, trying to distance myself from the crews. And it's gone great. Like, and I've recognized that, right? Like, I still enjoy doing that stuff. I still enjoy getting dirty and putting the hood on and all that. But I really try to balance it out, because I see one or the other slip, right? And it's usually the administrative, the office, the insurance, the tax, the bids, all that stuff is what goes first. And so that's when I need to pull back. And like my guys are very good about letting me do that. It's like, hey, like they always ask, like, hey, what's up? What's up next? What do we have coming up? How's this going? And it's like they're very much okay with me.
Do you just say, hey, don't worry about it?
No,
You'll be fine.
No, I don't. I mean, I like cluing them in, and they like kind of knowing what's up too. You know what I mean? But no, to answer your question, like I have started distancing myself, and I like the thought of being able to actually manage the show and not always have the tools on, you know?
So what do you think when you're 40, how much work, how much office? If you had a guess.
I don't know. I guess I haven't thought that far ahead. I would say, I don't know. I don't know if I want to say numbers.
What about like?
You say good talk.
Yeah. Like, what do you think about like retirement and stuff like that for you and your guys? Is there a plan there?
Yeah, there is.
He hasn't even thought about 40 yet. He's not for retirement, man.
Well,
Just let me be 30, John. No, I have. I think about the end game a lot. And especially as far as the guys go, you know, getting 401 set up and all that stuff. Like that's all in motion. And we've all had the discussion of like, hey, we don't want to be 40 and like swinging hammers. You know what I mean? Like I don't want that for them. I don't want that for me. So there's definitely a plan in place to slow down, back off, and say, okay, like let's bring the next generation in, train them up right, and like let's get the crews running to the point where we don't have to be breaking our backs every day.
Does it scare you that in order to make that happen, your company will have to grow like twice the size it is now?
No.
I'll just ask. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, but it has to happen that way if everyone's going to stay on board, have a growth path, and be able to bring in the next generation.
Yeah, and it doesn't scare us. It excites us. Like I really love the thought of that. I like the thought of us staying together and growing, not slowly but organically, right?
Yeah.
Like if that happens fast, because it happens fast, cool. But like we're not rushing it, you know. But no, I'm excited for that. I'm excited to have more trucks, more guys, and keep moving.
That's cool.
So throw me some steel and you know, make it happen.
I'll have Benny call you. We got one in Somerville. 6 family with retail below.
There you go.
Let's do
Podium?
it.
What's that?
Is it a podium?
I don't know. I see the drawings. They're in Dropbox.
Do you have 3D renderings? So we can make sense of them.
No.
No, you got 6 3D renderings for your Cambridge project, though.
He's pulling the NS thing where he's just pulling me along here.
The big
Yeah.
stuff. No, that's a good one. It starts. Oh, actually, we had to postpone the build on that one. It's supposed to start demo
Because of
next week.
COVID?
Is Somerville shut down?
Yeah, Somerville, I think so. Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and then I heard Needham shut down for 5 weeks.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Interesting times.
just the numbers that are getting tossed around. There's nothing consistent about what everyone's doing.
No.
It's
No.
like,
Yeah, right.
man, can you just give me some consistency so we know
I think that's the biggest thing that I'm
the unknown?
yeah, it's just the unknown, really. And I think, I mean, to bring this full circle, I think, even just this conversation makes me feel better about kind of where my head's at. But I think it is important to, I guess this will be released next week, and
It'll all be irrelevant because it'll
By
pass.
that point, you all will be infected from
No.
sitting in the same room together.
I don't. I tend to be a positive person, but I don't believe that this is. I do think it's going to get worse before it gets better, but I think that with the everything that they're trying to do and put in place and ask everyone to just do their part, in one way is unfortunate because I think it has a lot to do with all the idiots out there that aren't doing anything and being irresponsible with the situation, where it's like they're trying to counteract that, where it's like if everyone was playing even, we wouldn't have to do this huge lockdown. We'd all be responsible and do our part.
Right.
I don't even know where I was going with that point, but either way.
I think I don't necessarily know if it is. It's much easier said than done, and there's a lot of moving parts involved, and it's not just you, it's not just your employees, it's not just your customers. So I think you kind of have to weigh all of that out, and I think it's day to day at this point.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought earlier too. Is like it's not something that's construction specific that's affecting us.
Sure.
Like everyone's affected by this, so like
Yeah.
everyone's kind of in the same.
And it's easy to get trapped in the mindset that it's only impacting me or my industry or my company, where it's like, nope, everyone.
Everybody.
Well, the craziest thing is like this whole everyone's been working from home thing. It's like, dude, I can't work from home.
Mm-hmm.
Like my guys can't work from home. My subs can't work from home. So like that whole like buffer that everyone else has had in society doesn't really exist for us. Like even
Yeah, my neighbor's an electrician. He's like, I can't work from home. That's a really long screwdriver.
Oh, but like even my mom, I'm like, Ma, I told her I went over and set up a computer to work from home, which she's never done. And she's been working for the same company for 41 years. And she's like, I'm like, you're not going to work. She works over in Chilton's. And I'm like, you just can't do it. So we set her up. And she's like, I'll have 8 hours of work for the next 2 weeks a day. After that, the laboratories have shut down. There won't be much more for me to do. So how do I bill for it? Like even my wife's old company that was doing wastewater treatment plants, you would have to bill like a lawyer to each job. Well, if the jobs are shut down, there's nothing to do. So it's going to affect everyone, even the people that are working from home, air quotes, that it's more immediate to us, but everyone's going to be, let's say in 2 weeks, everyone's going to be in the exact same spot.
Right.
Across the board.
Yep.
I mean, which I think in one mindset is all right, because if everyone is in the same spot, then everyone reacts the same way, where everything just pauses.
That's my thought.
But it's like, what is like, how does that ramp back up? It's like, all right, everyone just stop paying bills and asking for money and just stay right exactly where you are right now. It's like, all right, when does that turn back on? Because does it turn?
But then you look at like Italy and you're like, oh my gosh, like there's a guy doing fitness on a roof and everyone's on a balcony doing it, and I'm like, is that us in 3 weeks? Because I'm not cool with that.
I'll run the fitness.
I don't want to jump off a bridge.
I don't know if anyone has those answers, Nick. And I mean, I think it depends on how all of this goes for one at this point. And then I just think that there's too many factors that are going to be involved in how we're going to bounce back from this, or what that's going to look like.
Right.
Tyler, what's your area like right now as far as like shutdowns and restrictions?
So I'm really close to Philadelphia. They shut down all the restaurants, all the bars in Philly. Just nothing's open at all. So everyone's taking a huge hit on that. And then as of now, between 8 and 5, they don't want people out unless you're an essential employee. And then it's the same stuff. 10 or, they don't want you in crowds. All the schools are shut down. My daughters are home right now until April 20th as of right now.
Wow.
And that's all tentative. But I mean, it's changing. April 20th. So like my wife works in Philly. She's home. They initially tried to say, well, you're going to go in for 2 days this week and then 3 days next week and flip flop. So we don't have the same group of people at work. And that was like 12 hours later. Nobody's going to work. They've shut down. So she works for URBM, which owns Urban Outfitters, Anthropologie, Free People, all those companies. And they just they're shutting down stores worldwide. So I mean, there's people who are bracing for this to be very bad. And I mean, that's a huge hit to shut down stores worldwide. So I don't know where things are going. And I worry about a lot of things, but when there's something like this, I don't know. Everyone's in it together. That's one thing that does give me like reassurance, and I'm not crapping my pants because there's nobody who's immune to this right now. Everyone's going through it, and like we all have to figure a way to get through it together. Some people are in a better position than others, but at the end of the day, everyone's at potential risk for this.
Dude, I was talking to my client today, and they work for Amazon and Fidelity. They were told not to come back till May to work.
Yeah.
Like, that's just crazy to me.
You can just see how much is changing day to day, even on Instagram and all the emails that you're getting from stores that are, hey, we're doing everything. Doors are open. Now it's, we're only taking private appointments. Now it's, hey, we're closed until this point. So
it's happening quick. Like one day it's like we're opening, free delivery. The next day is we're closed.
Exactly.
Did you send out an email? Did any of you guys send out an email?
It would have to be literally like one email. Just one email.
No, I mean, I texted my guys, my clients.
Yeah. I've been in touch with them, but I haven't. It's unlike you guys. Like they're more or less driving the bus for us, so it's kind of like, hey, we're here for you. Like, keep us posted.
I keep drafting something up to like send all the clients, and it, like Tyler said, it keeps changing.
Yeah.
I'm 10. And I don't have a ton of things going. I have things that we're planning for the future and everything else. So it's not like, I'm working one job at a smaller job, but we're also planning jobs for the next year. But for me to put all of these plans into play, I plan for everything in my life. And just with something like this, I know that my plans never go according to plan. So I'm not going to put everything into place and then wake up tomorrow and they're like, you're not allowed out of your house. Right. So I've told everyone, this is where we stand. This is where we are today. And tomorrow we'll wake up and kind of reevaluate where we are and rehash that plan and adapt and go until we can't go anymore so that everyone's safe.
Yeah, we actually booked Airbnbs for our travel to Pennsylvania, and I got an email like shortly after, and it was basically, hey, if you booked in this span of time, like full refund from Airbnb, because typically you go by like whoever you're renting from or whatever, and luckily like I think it's open for us, so if it does come down to it, we can't travel, I think we get a full refund, which is great.
We canceled our April vacation to Florida. Because they're probably going to use that for school.
Yeah,
if it's over.
They can't. We were supposed to go away in April as well, and they emailed us today saying that we can't get. I think Aruba shut down, and we were supposed to go there.
I've also stopped having any other client meetings. Like even last week, we had a bunch of stuff set up for this week, and I was like, end of the week, I was like, I'm not the one. Sometimes it's designers that are carrying the project, and I'm like, hey, just FYI, I think you should touch base with someone because I don't think that meeting's happening.
Right.
And they were like, no, I'll check. And it was funny. Like that actual client was like, yeah, no, we're good. We haven't traveled. We're healthy. And then an hour later, they were like, after rethinking it, we're both in the medical field. We shouldn't expose you, and we should, I was like, good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is changed. Like I'll have plans at the beginning of the day that by lunch, and it's
Yeah.
We had
Can I
one.
break up? Can I
Yeah.
break up?
A
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
I said we had. I mean, I've had plans in the morning that by lunchtime are completely different.
Yeah. My biggest thing is I keep calling like my Lubba distributor. I'm like, what's it gonna take for you guys to close? And he's like, they'd have to shut down the government. I'm like, cool, all right, so we're good. I'll still get 90% of my stuff, but like I don't know if like Marvin Windows.
right.
You know, like we're doing a project down in Cohasset that we have to be done for July 1st. Ideally, they'd be in for July 4th, and it's like all the lighting, all the tile, anything from China, all that stuff. We're trying to order that like this week. We haven't even gotten the permit yet. We're just trying to get everything ordered, and any doors, anything that's going to shut down factories that we need to get ahead of the line, so that way, if it does close,
You're the
we're
first.
not 400 in line.
Hmm.
Because that's the biggest thing. And I mean, I've talked to, even when it hit China, a lot of my investors and my clients were like, it's going to hit us third quarter, fourth quarter. Like my cabinet guy, Jim Dodd, was like, my supplier told me to buy all my plywood for the third quarter now, because they're going to have a shortage in plywood because adhesives, silicones, all that stuff that gets made in China, everywhere else is burning through inventory. So now it's going to be something that hits us. And even my investors were like, yeah, it's going to be crazy come third and fourth quarter that anything that China supplied. And if you look at a lot of labels, it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Is like it's not just right now what we're going to deal with as far as shortages at hand, but like the ripple effect, right? Is like you're talking about is months from now we're still going to be feeling this in some way.
Yeah. What are your costs going to be at that point going into a job?
That's why I don't get like lump sum. Like I would be more panicking if I had everything at lump sum and I had things under contract and this hits and you're like, yo, okay, that contract that we did, that's voided. Like the world's ending.
Did you see my clause on pandemics?
Yeah. How many people are gonna add that now?
Well,
I think that is though. That's like force majeure.
I mean, I had texted my insurance agent, and he called me immediately. He's like, I know you're gonna ask. It's not covered. I'm like, I was just asking out of pure curiosity. He's like, every one of our clients has called to see if any of this is covered, loss of wages, anything. And they called me today. They said, hey, right now, what I said stands, but there is talk about the government coming, and funding the insurance companies to be able to cover lost wages in this. So just, I would say, here's the advice.
But if you want to pay this premium,
yeah,
we can add this.
But no, I'm passing along the advice. He's like, keep track of it.
Yeah.
Whatever you can keep track of, super clear is that what this is impacting you financially, put that in a spreadsheet. So if that does happen, then you have something to be like, here, this is how it impacted
But wouldn't
me.
it just be payroll stubs?
That's what
What
I was
keep
thinking.
track of? I just have to give them, hey, for the time period, they're gonna say, hey, time period from here to here will cover. Here it is.
Being that it's, I guess being that it's everyone's dealing with it, yes. I think if it was, like if you were a restaurant, it's more than payroll.
Yeah, I mean it's people who aren't actually working too.
Right. Yeah. Lost time and whatnot.
Right.
That's
So.
just great. I would.
I know.
Restaurants is like. I wish I had more money right now. I really do. Because I would love to.
I wish I had more money every day.
No, but I'm like, no, I can live with what I have. I'm comfortable. Like I'm happy.
Yeah, but you
like,
don't wish you had more.
I mean, I would like to have my house finished. That's it. So
That's it.
yeah, really.
And the F-100. I saw that thing outside your
I know,
window.
everyone DM me. It's like, what's it do? I'm like, stop.
Took mine for a rip.
Dude, I'm not talking about it. No, I mean, dude, the list is long. But my point is, I would love to be able to help more people.
Right.
And I don't. That's the biggest bummer of this whole thing is that I'm 40 and like I don't even know if I'm 60. I'll be at a point where I'm comfortable, making things.
I'm hoping this is over by the time you're 60. To be honest.
But I'm just saying in general, like I would love to be able to give more. Like
Right.
it's like my wife she did the whole food bank thing and the homeless and all that. It's like what do you do right now? It's like I would love to be able to give away more time and more funds that I don't have.
It's
Right.
crazy. You even think, the schooling and I mean, there's a lot of kids who go to school and that's their meal.
Yep. Yeah.
Lunch and stuff like that. And now you have how many kids home where, you're still paying your taxes and your school taxes and all that stuff. I mean, I feel extremely badly for the people who are month to month or paycheck to paycheck. That's just their lifestyle, and that's the way that they've been for whatever reasons that now are without work.
Yeah.
That's tough.
I'm with you. It freaks me out a little because it's like, who knows how we'll bounce back, but it may not be the same for everybody. And that's what's going to cripple a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's it. Is like we talk about how it's going to affect our companies, right? But like there's people in way worse places, right? Financially and physically and resourceful.
Well, I think that goes back to, what Todd talked about is, look at what problems this is causing and see what you as an individual, as a company, as a team can do to help be part of the solution to even just one of those problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really great outlook on it.
Yep. Yeah, agreed.
Ryan, really appreciate you coming down from New Hampshire to hang out. Did you shower before you came here?
I did.
Wow. Wow.
That sounds so wildly out in left field.
So out of nowhere.
But
I looked at his reaction. I was like,
no, he knew I was
miss
coming. Last week he had his dates wrong, or maybe I messed him up.
No, I think it was me.
He's like, I even showered. I'm like, why did you shower?
I did not say that. I said, dude, I drove all the way home. I got showered up, ready to go. I didn't say I showered to come here. That's not what I meant.
All right. What I was getting at is
and took out my tongue ring.
You drove from your job to New Hampshire to shower, then to drive here, which I was like, I only focused on the fact that you showered.
That's
I was
funny.
like, none of us are showered.
No,
But
yeah,
it was just.
I wasn't far from home. Yeah, I didn't make it a point to shower before the podcast. Just ended up that way.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, either way, we appreciate you coming down. I know it's a trek down here. So
No, I'm glad I came. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
For those who don't follow you already, where are you most active?
Instagram mainly. RMS Iron Works LLC on Instagram.
How's your website doing?
It's good. It's good. Instagram's the place to follow, but
Okay.
the website's up too. RMSIronworksLLC.com.
Cool. And if people want to work with you?
Instagram's an easy way to reach out. My email is on the website or Instagram, so either way is fine.
Sweet, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I do as well.
It was a good
Thanks for
talk.
having me.
appreciate it.
All right. As always, guys, you can find us on... Oh, we should pull up some reviews.
They know how to find us.
Do we have any new ones?
I hope so. Don't read your text. Find the reviews.
Sorry,
My phone's
I got
dead.
people texting.
You got people texting. We're going to do a couple of reviews, but...
Like my phone always have like old reviews. Hold on a second.
well,
Keep talking.
yeah,
This is
well,
boring.
I'm boring.
No.
All right, so next week we have the guys over at Barney and Carey on the podcast. Kevin, who started the company, I actually got lunch with him a couple weeks ago, and he has a couple interesting stories, including some stories about him being one of the first people in the Back Bay to start a condo conversion. So, yeah, which is crazy to think about all the condos that are there now, being in that, early development of the condos in that area of the city, but also how he started the lumber company that now resides in Avon. And if you guys don't already know, Dovey actually runs a CNC shop over there, who we use.
I feel like Dobie's from like Harry Potter. He's like the little gremlin. Am I wrong?
Poor Dobie.
Did we read this one?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I think mine are old.
We
What
did.
are you guys looking at your watches for?
I'm trying to remember if we
watch.
read this one. We did.
Oh.
We did, but we did not read this.
You know what we should do?
Weren't we going to read the one where
yes.
somebody had like...
3 stars.
3?
3.
Oh. I didn't see this one.
Yeah, we did.
We
We
did
saw it
do-
last time. We're like,
Oh,
we
yeah.
got to touch upon this next time. We haven't been together.
All right. The earlier
Brace
episode.
myself.
You holding on? We got a 3-star review from D. Rudy. The early episodes were great when they were focused on people's work, but now it's turned into an interrogation of contractors. All 3 hosts do a great work, and I'm sure are all nice guys, but have no understanding of the majority of the market in America. Would be awesome if they talked to a budget builder who does great work and actually listen to what they have to say about doing a good job with a tight budget without trying to rip the contractor's business apart. Not everyone can afford a $500,000 Not everyone can afford $500,000 on a kitchen remodel. So, D. Rudy, appreciated, but I think a lot of that is taken out of context. At least speaking from my...
I also feel like I don't do $500,000 kitchen renovations, so they included me in that, but it's really just directed at you too.
What?
Let's be honest, it's all me.
Well, no. So this is the hard part, especially running a podcast and being a host of a podcast and doing this day in, or I should say week in, week out, is that our job is to ask the questions that are uncomfortable and ask the questions that, at least for me, I'm sitting here listening to you talk, Ryan, and when you say something, I'm like, all right, what is one of our listeners going to be in the car saying, I wish he asked this? So whether or not I'm comfortable asking it, it's like we're asking that because we know people want to know. Mm-hmm. And there's been times, John, myself, Tyler have asked questions where we've had to cut out because they were uncomfortable answering it. But the point is not to interrogate, but to get as much information out of it, whether that's helping one person or allowing one person to walk away with this with some comfortability of what they're doing in their career.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of it is that, there's an obligation for people to learn in this podcast. And if we bring you on to talk about leadership and you don't know how to talk about leadership, then you're wasting everyone's time. I don't get to roll out of bed and be at the podcast studio. I drive 45 minutes both ways. I'm not going to cry. I'm just saying that I want to learn something just as much as the listeners do. So we added it to the whole thing about when you subscribe to, be a guest on the podcast, is that a lot of people come on the podcast and for some reason it's not talking to a bunch. You did a great job today of just talking with a bunch of dudes about the industry and about what's on our mind. But people come on here and pose and they put on this fake bravado that's like, all right, that's not you.
Right.
We didn't have you on the podcast to talk about who you want to be as a company, who you want to be as a person or a builder or whatever. We asked you to be you.
This is an opportunity to talk about you, but also what today says. We talked about the coronavirus for the first hour of this podcast, and it was your side of it and everyone else's side. You're absolutely right, John, is that we have in the past had, you call them bravados, right?
But people come on, and then we have a really hard time because, we asked you to come on. It's an invite only. We asked you to come on because we wanted to hear your story. Then you come on, and it's not who we thought it would be or who.
And we let that fly, and the listeners like, dude, no one called him out.
Yeah.
No one, it's our obligation to get an authentic conversation.
Well, and like listening to this podcast as well, like I see this too, is I don't want to know, I don't want to listen to your mission statement on your website,
Exactly.
right? Like I want to hear the nasty bits. Like what's irking you? What are your struggles? What's been the hardest part of starting out or running the business? Like what's going on today? Like you said, with the virus, the economy, whatever. Like that's what I want to hear when I'm listening to a podcast. I can go on your website and learn what you want everybody to hear, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like that's what I like about the dig, and that's I don't know. I appreciate it. That's good. That's where it lies.
So
Even as far as budget go, I think that a lot of people have a hang up just because the market that you guys are in, the market that I'm in, and I personally don't think I'm in a super strong market. I think that I am able to position myself to do jobs that I want to do and get paid what I want to because I do a lot of work finding a customer that's a fit for me. But it doesn't, whether your budget is X or 2X or 3X, I think that the important part is that you're giving your customers the most that you can for that budget. And it doesn't matter if you're a budget builder or you do high-end renovations, as long as you're not ripping somebody off, as long as you're stretching that budget and building to your maximum capacity, it's not necessarily about the numbers. And I think that a lot of people do get hung up on that. They're concerned that, hey, we're not in a market where we can do a $500,000 kitchen, but it doesn't matter. If you're building a $500,000 kitchen and you're putting so much into it that your profit margin's less than people doing $60,000 kitchens or a $30,000 kitchen, what's the difference?
I think this goes to this old house, right?
I was going to say, I almost wrote a note to you.
Yeah, it's like they do a really great job of leaving price out of it, and this could be a test for us where, like, let's try to figure out a way that we can communicate that we're doing a really high-end kitchen, but let's leave costs out of it because realistically, cost is irrelevant.
But I love knowing numbers. You can scale it down. Like
Yeah,
I think
scales-
Rich
scales
said
the
it the
word.
best. Is that maybe it was Rich? Is that we show the highest end. The market will then fill in below us.
Sure.
It's okay. The other hard part of this is that like we had Steve on way back in the day. Someone that Tyler and I both know kind of shouted me out on Instagram, and we had a call, and he's like, I listened to Steve's podcast. I wanted to hear more about Steve, but you guys wouldn't let him talk. You guys forget that people we talk a lot on the podcast, which is comfortable. And again, you did a great job today. People come on this podcast and they forget to talk. And then we try and coax them out with casual conversation or whatever.
It's like they want to listen live.
Yeah.
It's like, but you were the person that
You're
you want to
the guest.
listen to.
So it's not the easiest, and we're not podcasters, whatever that is, to be able to do a good job of drawing that out. We do the best we can, but like it's almost impossible, and sometimes we're like, how do we steer this conversation? And that's why we've started the podcast way more raw about random stuff, so that way people forget they're in front of mics or in front of their computer at home, and trying to let this thing roll in where they're like, are we recording? Yeah. So we've tried to adapt to make it more comfortable for everyone. So if it comes off like we're talking too much, or we're not giving them enough voice, it's also hard when they're on the computer with Tyler, is that it's really tough when you're not face to face to know when someone's done with their train of thought, not when they're done speaking. That's really tough to gauge. And in the beginning, we had lots of silence, so we tried to bridge the silence with someone jumping in right away. And then how do we navigate this thing? And honestly, it's a huge learning curve for us, and we're just hoping that every day we improve. So, I mean, I really appreciate the 3-star. I love the 5 stars, but I'm always one to learn from past and people's perspective. And not that I want to keep them coming, but
No, but
it's appreciated.
Yeah, let's see. I hope he listens, and I hope they I'm assuming I hope they listen and respond to our response. So I'm going to skip you can find us. You know where to find us.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys listening.
Love the reposts.
Yeah, every week. All right, Ryan, I've been looking at you across the table. 1620 made. Give me the spiel.
Yeah, so these guys, they're out of Mass. I found them. I found them by Johnny posting something about them a while back. But I stopped in just kind of on a whim. Wanted to check them out. Always blowing through jeans and Carhartts, and nothing ever fit right. So they fit me up with some gear. It was a little pricey. Walked out, tried it out, absolutely loved it. Went back, and ever since then, it's literally all I wear.
The craziest thing about that company is it's 2 guys right out of Massachusetts.
Yep.
Building working gear for the working person.
Yep.
And it's really hard not to fall in love with that.
Yeah, and the stuff's great.
Lawrence? Where are they?
What's that?
Where are they in Lawrence?
They were in Haverhill, and now they're in Newburyport.
Okay.
Up by the coast.
La-di-da.
Yeah. But no, they're great guys. Super great customer service, and the product's just I love it.
You can find them on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1620 USA.
Yep.
Right.
Sweet.
Yep.
Keep 'em
We'll see you
coming.
guys next week.